The story begins with the memory of a certain day when the gates appeared and monsters started to run rampant throughout the world. The only way to stop them was for those who had awakened magical abilities to fight back. Now we are shown a battlefield where the members of the Golden Seekers are fighting against the wave of monsters pouring out from the gate. During the battle, a straggler cried out for help, and the members urged each other to assist. Just before the monster could harm the civilians, someone kicked it away. The one who saved them asked if everyone was all right. Misato Kyoichiro then steps onto the stage, fighting against the wave of monsters and taking down dozens of monsters within seconds, single-handedly. People watching him are amazed. One of the members explains that his power is the power of time. He knows what will happen next. She calls his ability inhuman. When all of the monsters are finally defeated, Kyoichiro kills the last one. Feeling satisfied that he has protected the land and its peace, he declares that he will now seal the gate. However, as he begins the sealing, he is suddenly thrown inside the gate, and the seal closes from the outside. Kyoichiro is shocked. He has never seen a future like this. He asks if all of them were part of this plan and why they are doing this. At this moment, they reveal their true colors. They tell him that precisely because he had no idea what was really going on, he ended up betrayed. Kyoichiro is still confused, but they continue to explain. They reveal that he, Kyoichiro, is in fact a monster at level 100 with the time attribute. All they ever wanted was to earn money easily, but because of him, they always had to take on the most dangerous missions again and again. They tell him this will be the last time, as they are parting ways with him forever. Kyoichiro is stunned that his teammates would betray him for such petty reasons. All he ever wanted as the leader of the Golden Seekers was to make the world a safer place and to protect them all. He asks himself why things have led to this. But he cannot think for long, because monsters inside the gate begin to attack him. He counters the first, only to see a sea of monsters rushing toward him. In desperation, he looks into the future, searching for a way to escape, but in every outcome, he dies at the hands of the monsters. Realizing there is no future in which he survives, he throws himself into battle, determined to take down as many as possible. Despite his efforts, he cannot change his fate. With no way to escape his death, he still fights on, promising himself not to die a meaningless death. He vows to reincarnate, grow stronger, reach the absolute peak of power, and one day take revenge on those who betrayed him. Filled with rage and despair, he activates his final spell, a spell that carries his will and every emotion throughout the world. In the end, he wakes up in a new body. He rises from a bed and looks into a mirror, confirming that the first phase of his plan was a success. Looking around the hospital, he notices things that feel unfamiliar. He worries that he may have come too far into the future, and if that is true, he might not be able to exact revenge on his betrayers. He finds the ID of the boy whose body he now inhabits and learns that he has come 20 years into the future. However, what interests Kyoichiro most is the attribute the boy possessed. It is none other than the void attribute. He laughs, because in his previous life he was feared by his comrades for having what they thought was the strongest ability, but even he had limits. At one point, he reached the peak of his abilities, yet even with his foresight, he could never see the limits of the void attribute. He feels pity for the boy, because although void may be the strongest attribute, no one in his previous life ever possessed it, which meant those who did were thought useless since no one knew how to grow or improve it. This mystery seems to be true for the boy as well, as his skill is stuck at level 1. Kyoichiro knows the boy must have been mocked many times for failing to improve. With this, he makes a promise to the body's former owner. Rest assured, for he will make this name known throughout the world as the strongest adventurer to ever live. Because of his clairvoyance, Kyoichiro already knows how to grow the skills of the void attribute. He resolves to rise to absolute strength in this life and take revenge on those who betrayed him for such petty reasons. The first thing he has to do in order to get his revenge is level up. The void attribute, as the name suggests, is a magic that controls nihility. The essence of this ability is to freely project one's imagination into reality. Imagination itself is something everyone can do, but the difficult part is bringing it into reality. Since the boy's body is injured, Kyoichiro thinks that if he applies the image in his mind to his body, he can test it. He imagines every cell in the body being restored by magic. With this, the wounds slowly begin to heal. Because the spell is still at a basic level, the effects are slow, and his body has not fully healed internally. However, if he uses it multiple times, he will gradually level up. The ability to convert imagination into reality will also grow stronger, and the scope of his magic will expand. It will open doors to new possibilities, and one day he may reach the point where he can freely convert imagination into reality. As he is thinking this, the doctor arrives, surprised to see him awake. The doctor tells him not to move, since he had been hurt by a monster. This explains to Kyoichiro why the body was so badly injured in the first place. The doctor remarks that his waking up is like a miracle from the saintesses. Hearing the unfamiliar term, Kyoichiro asks what that means. The doctor is shocked that he seems to have forgotten basic knowledge. He explains that he is talking about the saintesses of the pentagram saints. But Kyoichiro replies that he does not know that term either. The doctor concludes that Kyoichiro must be confused after regaining consciousness. He tells him to rest and leaves the room. Left alone, Kyoichiro wonders about these new terms. Perhaps they are new adventurers who have become famous nowadays. He realizes that he must also understand the current situation of the world while leveling up. He turns on the television and sees a documentary about the SSS-class disaster. Watching it, he is stunned. The culprit is reported to be none other than Misato Kyoichiro himself. He is shocked, asking why he would be named the culprit. According to the documentary, Misato Kyoichiro had known about the arrival of the disaster but did not tell anyone, supposedly planning to take advantage of the chaos to rule the world. The documentary continues. His plans were stopped by the remaining members, who later became a symbol of hope for everyone, known as the Pentagram Saints. They defeated Misato Kyoichiro after a fierce battle, sealed off the gate, and claimed great fame for their feat. Even now, the members of the Pentagram Saints influence and lead large regions of the world. This revelation shakes Kyoichiro to his core. He laughs bitterly, realizing they not only betrayed him, but also dragged his dignity through the mud. First, they sacrificed him, and then they shamelessly claimed all the rewards, becoming celebrated heroes. Rage fills him. He swears he will never forgive them. He vows again that he will drag them all into the depths of hell. But for now, he must remain cautious and avoid revealing his identity, since he is still weak. Looking at the academy that the boy had attended, Kyoichiro discovers that it is run by one of the very members who betrayed him. Waking up in a perfect body with the void attribute, and with a target already in sight, he considers himself lucky. However, Iwako, the target, is cautious and will not show any weaknesses. The difference in their levels is also immense. He cannot defeat him yet. So, he decides to focus on leveling up first before going after him. After some weeks, Kyoichiro in his new body has made a complete recovery. The doctor is astonished at how quickly he has healed and tries to praise the saintesses, but Kyoichiro interrupts, telling him that was not the case. It was his own power. He thanks the doctor for taking care of him. Finally leaving the hospital, with his basic preparations complete and his level increased significantly, Kyoichiro plans to enter a dungeon for a warm-up. The doctor told him that everyone related to Kyosuke had died in the accident. Kyoichiro feels bad for the boy, but this also means he now has complete freedom to do whatever he wants. He then goes near a gate. Hiding his face, he tries to enter but is stopped by the guard, who tells him that the minimum level required is 30 and that he needs to have a party. The guard explains that going alone in the dungeon is too dangerous. Kyoichiro replies that this may be the case for others, but he is a student of a top university, and as long as he fills out the consent form, he should be allowed in. He had already researched these things while he was hospitalized. Some bystanders tease him, saying the guard is only advising him for his own good and that he should know his place as a greenhorn. Before the guard can take further action, Kyoichiro signs the form and moves forward. He thanks the guard for worrying about him. As he enters, the guard requests 3 others nearby to follow him to make sure he does not die. One of them almost rejects the idea, but another pulls him along, saying this might be their chance. They can get rich inside, and whatever happens in a dungeon stays in the dungeon. With that, they rush in, mocking that the kid still needs 100 years of training. Inside the dungeon, which looks like a cave, the party of 3 arrive with the plan to loot everything while eliminating the newbie kid, as this is how they always survive. They keep running for 10 minutes, but find nothing in the path until they finally catch up to him. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro is already facing a horde of monsters. Using his void attribute, he summons various types of magical spells of different natures, destroying every foe in his path. As the smoke clears, the three are shocked at how quickly he wiped out the monsters. But their greed soon takes over when they spot a rare drop that could sell for a handsome amount of money. Seeing that Kyoichiro has not noticed them, they plan to assassinate him and take the loot. They jump around the cave and launch magical spells at him. Kyoichiro, angered by their actions, mocks them and easily dodges their spells without breaking a sweat. He thinks to himself that no matter the time or era, there are always disgusting people who try to take what belongs to someone else. Two of the members are shocked at how effortlessly he avoided their attacks, but the third charges in with a fire attack, claiming Kyoichiro was just lucky. Before he can land the blow, Kyoichiro counters with an amplified fist directly to the gut, knocking him down. At their betrayal, Kyoichiro declares that he will show no mercy. He calls them the worst type of people, those who always betray and kill others for their own gain. For the sake of his ideals and his revenge, he vows to destroy them. Inside the dungeon, Yoichi Tsudai, who is the subordinate of Awako, arrives after hearing the news of a student from their institute entering the dungeon alone. However, the scene before him is completely different from what he expected. He questions why 3 novice-level adventurers are lying defeated on the ground, and how in the world this even happened in the first place. Now, back at the house, Kyoichiro reviews his gains. He was able to level up inside the D-rank dungeon and judge the level of power he currently has at hand. During this, he also secured a new spell that obscures information. With this, he can fake his level and stay hidden without blowing his cover. The next day will be his first day at the academy, so he lies down to rest. Just as he gets into bed, he reads some messages that reveal direct bullying aimed at the former owner of his body. The following day, Kyoichiro, posing as Kayasuke, goes to the academy. A girl calls out to him and asks if he is feeling better. She is his classmate, who had been looking after him, and she tells him how worried she was. Seeing that Kayasuke had people who genuinely cared for him makes Kyoichiro feel somewhat happy. But this moment is ruined when others mock Kayasuke for being non-attribute and returning after barely escaping death. They demand payment in return for protecting him, and they press him for money. Realizing their behavior, Kyoichiro understands that the text messages from the previous night were also from these guys. Before he can act, Asahi Karen steps forward, trying to stop them by saying he just returned from the hospital. However, her hands tremble in fear. Seeing this, Kyoichiro steps in and tells Asahi that he will handle it on his own. The bullies mock him for acting tough and threaten to remind him how useless he is. Instead of backing down, Kyoichiro mocks them in return, declaring that he will remind them of their place. Kyoichiro remembers his promise to make this boy's name famous worldwide, and with that, he prepares for battle. This enrages the bullies, and one of them readies a fire spell. Asahi is shocked, realizing they are using magic outside of a restricted area. The bully launches the attack at Kayasuke, but Kyoichiro counters with the very same magic, shocking the bullies. Kyoichiro mocks them, asking if this is all they can do. Humiliated, the bully calls over his lackeys. They both use different elements to try to overpower Kyoichiro, but again, he uses the same attributes to dominate their attacks. Terrified, they begin to wonder how many elements he can use. Kyoichiro then says that it's his turn. He declares that at the very least, he will keep them alive. He lights up an explosion, forcing them to run away. Before they can call for help, Kyoichiro grows furious and asks them if Kayasuke had not also asked for their help once, and what their response to him was. He says there is no need for an answer, because disgusting people like them always act the same way. And because of that, he declares, nothing will stop his fist from landing. With this, Kyoichiro delivers a devastating punch to the bully, knocking him out. Asahi Karen is shocked at what she sees. The lackeys quickly pick up their leader and flee, while Kyoichiro declares that from now on, no one will be able to look down on Kayasuke. Together, they will walk the path toward becoming the strongest. Outside of the school, the lackeys carry their boss away, apologizing along the way. They are angry at how he changed after being discharged from the hospital. At the same time, Kyoichiro thinks that they were not as big of a deal as he had expected. Now, in the school hallways, as he is heading to his class, others seem to take notice of his presence. This makes him think that perhaps he is standing out more than necessary. Just as he is almost at his classroom, someone approaches him and asks if he is Kyosuke. Gaining his attention, the person asks if he has time to talk. But Kyoichiro wonders who this person is. He believes this guy is just an upperclassman looking to cause trouble. He thinks to get him off his back by saying his class is about to start. Hearing this, the person says he forgot to introduce himself. He follows up by saying he is Yoichi Tsudai, leader of the Biting Cats. But the important part that catches Kyoichiro's attention is when Yoichi says the group was formed by Iwako himself. After this, Yoichi asks again if he has time to spare. Hearing about someone related to Iwako, Kyoichiro is tempted and agrees, saying it cannot be helped. In an empty classroom, Yoichi bluntly asks if Kyosuke is responsible for the death of adventurers in the dungeon last night. However, Kyoichiro straightforwardly denies any knowledge of the matter. He wonders how Yoichi could suspect him, since he had cleaned up his traces so well. Yoichi explains that the information he gathered was that a student from their school entered a dungeon alone. When he went to investigate, all he found were the defeated, well-known novice adventurers. He also adds that Kyosuke had shown multiple elements in the morning. From Yoichi's tone, Kyoichiro realizes that he does not actually know anything and is just trying to dig up information. Yoichi presses him to speak, but Kyoichiro plays it safe, saying he was attacked earlier that morning and has no idea what happened. To reinforce this, he takes out his adventurer card and shows that he is only level 1. Confirming that his level is indeed 1 and his attribute is void, Yoichi grows angry, realizing his time was wasted on a nobody. He warns him not to act suspicious in the future, as it would be a pain to clean things up again, and then leaves. As they part ways, Kyoichiro thinks he may be able to use Yoichi to his advantage, as a way to reach Iwako without raising suspicion. Thinking of ways to manipulate him, he begins to form an idea for a specific magic spell. Now we find Yoichi in Iwako's office, reporting on the events of the dungeon. Hearing this, Iwako says it is not like Yoichi to make mistakes, and warns him to choose people more carefully. Yoichi apologizes, promises to handle the situation, and tries to calm him down. Iwako then warns him that if word gets out that Yoichi was involved in the deaths of novice adventurers, it will bring criticism upon him as well. He grabs Yoichi's face and threatens that if things go wrong, Yoichi could be expelled in an instant. Yoichi promises to set things right. Inwardly, however, he grows angry, thinking that if he had known things would play out like this, he would have taken more money from those adventurers. Iwako then asks, according to Yoichi, a third-year student entered the dungeon, but there is no student in that class who did so. This would mean the cause of the novices' deaths was probably a monster inside the dungeon during their hunt, rather than a student. Iwako concludes that this is a more believable explanation than assuming a student killed them. He adds that it must be this way, unless something truly out of the ordinary happened. Thinking about this, Yoichi wonders if the void element could be that out-of-the-ordinary factor, so he reports that there might be a possibility of a unique attribute being involved. Considering it, Iwako admits that there is indeed a chance. Getting this clue excites Yoichi, and he quickly asks Iwako to leave everything to him, claiming that he will resolve the problem at hand swiftly. In a cave dungeon, many students seem to be practicing their magic while defeating monsters. Suddenly, one of the monsters breaks through, and the students become frightened. However, before anyone can be harmed, the monster is defeated by a golden light attack, which came from none other than Yoichi, who was in charge of today's exercise. He tells the students not to break formation. Finding his abilities formidable, many admire his power, noting that he was personally chosen by the principal. Some even wonder how they could join the same team as him. After dealing with the monsters, Yoichi leaves the rest to the students and walks away for his own business. He takes out an ornament, which is a device used to locate people. He tells it to find the location of Kyosuke. As soon as he says this, the chain begins to glow and points in the direction where Kyosuke is at that moment. Looking at the directions he received, Yoichi finds the result to be exactly as he expected. The chain shows Kyosuke is far away from the other students. Yoichi does not care what Kyosuke is doing alone, but he sees this as the perfect opportunity. He can eliminate the threat quietly and blame it all on monsters, because what happens in a dungeon stays in a dungeon. The reason he is after Kayasuk stems from a chain of events, starting with the death of the hunter-killer he had been using. Trouble has followed ever since Kayasuk was discharged from the hospital. The things the bullies told him are also troubling, as they claim the non-attribute kid attacked them using the same magic types they used. And, even more shocking, that he created flames unlike anything they had ever seen before. Yoichi could not make sense of their story and left. The bullies thought they were free, but Yoichi ordered others to re-educate them properly. He has no use for incompetent people who are overpowered by a so-called weakling. Two bullies tried to stop it, but in the chaos, the one who had taken a direct hit from Kyoichiro shouted in fear that Kayasuk was no longer human. His words carried immense terror. To deal with Kayasuk, Yoichi had arranged a special class to use the situation to his advantage. But during that time, Kayasuk used illusions and escaped. Yoichi suspects he must have used magical tools, which is the only explanation he can come up with. He also believes Kayasuk may have used similar tricks to get rid of the hunter-killer he had relied on. On his way, Yoichi found many defeated monsters on the ground. Looking at them, he wondered how a supposed weakling could have done this. The monsters had clearly been defeated in a single strike of fire magic. This aligned with what the bullies had told him earlier. Still, this scale of power did not impress him. After all, even Iwako, who had dropped out of the pentagram, could do such things easily. Yoichi is currently following Kayasuk because he has no other option. However, he plans to surpass Iwako sooner or later and take his place to finally rule over the world. Until then, he must never allow anyone to know his connection to the hunter-killer. And as for Kayasuk, he is an unknown variable that could disrupt his plans. To prevent this, Yoichi is determined to make sure Kayasuk reaches the afterlife sooner rather than later. Finally, after tracking him, Yoichi arrives at his destination. He believes his target must be on the other side. Curious about what Kayasuk is doing there, he peeks around the wall to check the situation. But to his shock, he finds Kayasuk sitting on top of a mountain of defeated monsters, calmly telling him that he has been waiting and that Yoichi is far too late. This catches Yoichi off guard, as he had hidden his presence the entire time. He wonders how Kayasuk was able to notice him. Just as these thoughts cross his mind, Kyoichiro speaks the very same words he is thinking. This gives Yoichi another shock, realizing his mind has been read. Yoichi steps out from the corner and demands to know who he really is. Instead of replying, Kayasuk mocks him, saying he thought anyone chosen by Iwako would be extraordinary, but judging from what he has seen so far, Yoichi is clearly flawed and ordinary. He adds that the only thing Yoichi has in common with Iwako is their cowardly habit of using novice killers for money extortion, a trait both of them share. Yoichi tries to regain control of the conversation, but Kyoichiro interrupts, telling him that he may enjoy tormenting others, but he has never known what it feels like to be the one hunted. Kyoichiro says he should consider himself lucky, because he is about to learn that feeling now. In his mind, Kyoichiro already begins planning to make a puppet he can use in the future. Now in the dungeon, Yoichi declares Kayasuk to be far too dangerous to be left unchecked, and for the sake of his goals, he needs to get rid of him at any cost. Saying this, he attacks him over and over, but still cannot land a single hit. This makes Kyoichiro mock him, asking if this is all the strength he has. He throws a fireball at Yoichi, who deflects it and tries to taunt Kayasuk. But that attack was only a feint, as Kayasuk follows it up with a series of magical strikes ranging from lightning to earth magic. Seeing this convinces Yoichi that Kayasuk possesses multiple elements. Enraged, he demands to know what is going on with his attribute, which is supposed to be void. Before he can even finish his sentence, he is hit again with another barrage of attacks. This infuriates Yoichi as more and more problems keep rising for him and his plans. Hearing this, Kyoichiro becomes intrigued and asks what plan he has. In the middle of battle, Yoichi begins to reveal his ambition, how he is going to surpass Iwako, take his place, and become the next pentagram saint. Kayasuk asks why Yoichi is so fixated on Iwako when there are other saints as well. At this question, Yoichi explains that his target is Iwako simply because Iwako is a dropout of the pentagram saints. He adds that if he can take that position for himself, he will be able to rule over the world. To him, it makes sense to target someone weak. These responses disgust Kayasuke. He says that at first, he thought Yoichi might have had some interesting reason for his ambitions, but hearing his shallow words made him think otherwise. Insulted, Yoichi becomes furious and rushes toward Kayasuke with intent to kill him. While attacking continuously, he shouts that there is nothing wrong with wanting power. He yells that there is nothing wrong in desiring power, money. The kind of power he seeks is the type where he can trample over others and no one can oppose him. He declares that if he becomes a saint and joins the pentagram, he can do whatever he wants and even gain hold of a saintess's weakness. Hearing these twisted ideas, Kyoichiro replies coldly that Yoichi's words are not even worth listening to. He decides to end the fight, launching Yoichi back with a single powerful strike that shatters his sword. Kyoichiro thanks him, because while Yoichi wasted time talking, he was able to gather enough energy to prepare the spell he truly wanted to use. Kayasuke approaches Yoichi slowly, terrifying him. Soon after, Yoichi is struck by Kyoichiro's absolute hypnosis magic. The spell forces Yoichi to fall unconscious. Observing the effect, Kyoichiro notes that the magic requires time to break the target's spirit, but once complete, it is extremely effective. He orders Yoichi to stand up, and in response, Yoichi obeys, rising to his feet. Satisfied, Kyoichiro instructs him to finish the class mission he was assigned to. Yoichi responds like a puppet. To refine the spell, Kyoichiro then orders him to speak in his normal tone. Instantly, Yoichi's manner of speech and movement return to normal, and he rushes back to the group. The results are better than Kyoichiro expected, making him pleased with the outcome. Afterward, Kyoichiro also returns to the group, where Karen was looking for him. She asks if he is all right. He tells her that he was just discussing something with a senior, nothing more. Surprised at such an unusual pairing, she asks what they were talking about. Kyoichiro spins the topic, saying that they were discussing how to achieve one's dreams, and he received good advice that will help his dreams come true. Seeing him so happy, she wishes for his dreams to come true as well. Soon, the class ends and everyone begins leaving the area. Kyoichiro is content. He has made good progress and gained himself a useful pawn, one that even Iwako will never suspect so easily. In Iwako's office, he asks Yoichi if there has been any progress on what he mentioned last time. To his surprise, Yoichi reports that there is progress and that the student possessing a unique attribute was involved in the whole mess. He further reports in detail that the student is none other than Ase Kayasuke, a first-year student who has the void element. He adds that the student is now captured by him, and after interrogation, he learned that Kayasuke was able to defeat the novice hunters because he possessed multi-attribute magic. Hearing the words multi-attribute magic immediately gets Iwako's attention. When he asks for more details, Yoichi smiles inwardly, knowing the fish has taken the bait. Yoichi tells Iwako that the specifics are still unknown, but if given some time, he can handle it and extract more information. He then throws another bait by suggesting that since it has been a while, why doesn't Iwako try his hand on him personally? Thinking about it, Iwako admits it has been some time since he last interrogated anyone, and the thought gives him something to look forward to. He plans to repay Kayasuke for all the trouble he has caused. Iwako is about to join Yoichi, but after receiving a call, he asks Yoichi to go ahead and promises to follow up later. Iwako answers the call, and on the other end, a woman thanks him for selecting them for the bid. However, Iwako, with a straight face, tells her to drop the act. The caller is none other than Lei Ruashi, a former member of the Golden Seekers who betrayed Kyoichiro over 2 decades ago. She teases Iwako, asking why he is acting so distant when they are partners, both being paid by the government. Iwako tells her to cut the call, saying he has urgent matters to deal with. Hearing this, Lei mocks him, asking what kind of urgency he could possibly have when he always fills his pockets while running a school. Iwako considers arguing, but drops it, instead telling her that he has an investigation on a student who possesses the void element. Hearing this, she laughs and asks what a loser with such an attribute could even do. Iwako agrees to some extent, but points out that a unique attribute always brings potential variables. Lei then asks if he is referring to something like the time attribute Kyoichiro once possessed. The mention of this name angers Iwako, and he tells Lei not to ever bring him up again, as he hates it. Lei seems to enjoy his frustration. Still, she agrees with him, saying that when Kyoichiro awakened, the balance of power shifted entirely. She then tells him that since he is busy, she will contact him later. Iwako, furious, slams the phone down, cursing the sly nature of Lei Ruashi. Hearing Kyoichiro's name has ruined his mood, and he decides to take out his anger on the captive student. That evening, Iwako goes to his usual place. Finally, he slams open the door, announcing his arrival angrily. But to his shock, there is no one inside. Suddenly, Yoichi attacks from behind, but Iwako blocks it with ease. With a smirk, Iwako comments that it seems he has been underestimated. He tells Yoichi that he may have gotten overconfident after receiving praise, but he is far from capable of defeating him with such petty tricks. Saying this, Iwako summons golden chains that wrap around Yoichi, restraining him completely. He kicks him and begins beating him, saying that Yoichi has made the wrong choice, and that his foolish desires will now be the reason for his death. Just as he goes in for the kill, a voice echoes from behind, saying that he hasn't changed, he is still a big idiot. Chills run down Iwako's spine as he looks around and demands to know who is there. Kyosuke steps forward, adding that Iwako has always groveled before the strong and exploited the weak. He is still the same greedy man, even after all these years. Iwako, enraged, asks how a mere student dares to speak to him like this. Kyosuke repeats the very words Iwako had said earlier, about ruining oneself with foolish desires, and throws them back at him, saying they perfectly describe Iwako himself. Fuming, Iwako threatens the student before him, saying he will expel him immediately and demands to know his ID. But Kyoichiro smirks and says that he has finally made it this far in the game, so he intends to take his time and have a proper talk, just between the two of them. In front of the warehouse, Kyoichiro mocks Iwako, which makes him furious. Iwako angrily declares that he will show him the difference in their strength. Using advanced earth magic, he summons a giant hand made of stone, fully confident that a mere student cannot possibly dodge his attack. He launches it with the intent to kill. The attack crashes down and lands on its target successfully. Overconfident, Iwako laughs, claiming this is his perfect victory, saying this is what happens to people who dare to defy him. Looking ahead, and seeing that the warehouse has also been destroyed, he wonders if he might have used more strength than he should have. Thinking about it, he tells himself he doesn't even know who that student was. Wiping sweat from his forehead as he walks toward the area, he suddenly stops. He cannot believe what is in front of his eyes. The student he attacked is standing there completely unscathed. Kyoichiro taunts him, saying he only wanted to have a little chat. Iwako panics, because never before has any student survived advanced magic without a scratch. He yells, demanding to know who he is and what his name is. At this, Kyoichiro starts laughing and replies, asking why he is even asking such a question. Surely, he should already know who he is. Confused, Iwako yells that he doesn't know and insists that a freak like him should stop messing around and answer him properly. At this, Kyoichiro places his hand on the back of his neck and says how hurt he feels by that response. Then, in his own chilling tone, he follows with, "Did you really forget about me?" This pattern of speech terrifies Iwako to his very core because he knows exactly who used to talk like that. Just the thought makes sweat drip down his face. The fear overwhelms him so much that he loses his rationality for a moment. Thinking back, he remembers they had thrown him into the gate. Enraged, Iwako convinces himself that this student must be playing mind games with him. He yells that the man he is talking about, the one known as Misato Kyoichiro, is already dead, and everyone knows it. Shouting this, he launches more spells at Kyoichiro. But looking at his pitiful behavior, Kyoichiro only sighs, asking how long Iwako has been living by believing only what is convenient for him, while ignoring what is not. Iwako threatens him not to come closer, warning that if he does, he will unleash his magic. He instantly understands that Iwako, in the end, had been deceived by sweet words from those around him, and that was the very reason he betrayed him 2 decades ago. Not wanting to accept any of this, Iwako launches another attack. But this time, his spell is destroyed by Kyoichiro, using the exact same magic he had once wielded in his last mission as Misato Kyoichiro to defeat the monster of the outbreak. Overcome by fear, Iwako falls to the ground, shaking, and stammers that he was sure they had trapped him inside the dungeon that day. In response, Kyosuke tells him that yes, he was trapped, thrown into the depths of despair and agony. Iwako, trembling, finally admits that he is the real Misato Kyoichiro. To this, Kyoichiro coldly replies that it took him long enough to realize it. Still unable to believe what he heard, Iwako stands again, claiming that if what the kid said is really true, then it would mean Misato died and returned from the dead. He says he is not such a fool as to accept this level of nonsense. Preparing an attack, he declares that a ghost should remain silent. With that, Iwako launches multiple wind attribute attacks followed by earth attribute magic, but to no avail, as all of his attacks are dodged. Growing tense, he tries to find a way to gain the upper hand in this situation. Everyone used to mock him as just a support character, but that never meant he was weak. To turn the tides, he begins preparing another attack to finish things once and for all. He tells Kyoichiro that he has been working for over 2 decades to perfect this one. Iwako wields dual magic at the same time, unleashing a massive cyclone filled with rocks toward Kyoichiro. He claims this is the strongest attack he has ever used. When his attack is not immediately countered, he starts laughing, believing he has finally achieved what no one else could, killing the great Misato Kyoichiro with his own hands. He mumbles that if Kyoichiro thought he was still the same weakling as before, then he was dead wrong, because over the years he has grown stronger. No matter how powerful Kyoichiro's time ability once was, it is now all in the past. Iwako boasts that 20 long years have passed, long enough for everything to change. The coward he once was no longer exists, and he keeps shouting that Kyoichiro should never have underestimated him. Arrogant and filled with pride, he tells himself he has grown stronger over 2 decades, and now he will boast about this achievement. He believes that none of the pentagram saints will ever mock him again. He even convinces himself that he is now the strongest among them all. But his fantasy is interrupted by Kyoichiro's calm voice asking if he is done talking. Startled, Iwako turns and is horrified to see Kyoichiro standing there, completely unharmed. Kyoichiro commends him, saying he is impressed that Iwako can use offensive magic stronger than normal, adding that it should be expected from a so-called hero of the era. Then Kyoichiro declares that he will take his revenge without holding back any longer. Seeing the intensity of the magic radiating from him, Iwako instinctively realizes he is facing a monster he cannot handle. But having come this far in life, he refuses to turn back. Desperately, Iwako launches another earth element attack, which seems to land, but Kyoichiro actually stops it in its tracks with his own power. Kyoichiro tells him that if he truly thinks he can win with such weak attacks, then he is living in a dream. Terrified, Iwako tries to halt Kyoichiro's advance, but all his efforts are in vain. Every attack is countered by Kyoichiro, who uses the same elements, but with superior technique, easily suppressing Iwako's spells. Unable to stop him, Iwako is blasted away. Now, Kyoichiro stands directly before him, one of the very targets of his revenge, his fist blazing with power and ready to strike. Iwako drops to his knees and begins begging for forgiveness, not only for what he has done now, but also for what he did 2 decades ago. Iwako laughs nervously to himself, believing that Kyoichiro is still a soft-hearted man who will forgive others. He convinces himself that if he begs like this, he will survive. But unexpectedly, his plea is rejected. With a furious tone, Kyoichiro declares that this is exactly the reason he was trapped in the dungeon 2 decades ago. He adds that he is no fool to let such betrayal happen again. With everything hopeless, Iwako tries to run away, shouting that they were once brothers. But Kyoichiro roars back that he has no right to say that anymore, not after making him into a revenge-seeking demon. With that, Kyoichiro lands a devastating blow straight to Iwako's face, following it with a series of punches that nearly knock him unconscious. Before fading, Iwako's final thought is that he should never have messed with him. Finally, Kyoichiro delivers one last strike, knocking Iwako out. He does not kill him, because he still has uses for him and answers he wants from him. For now, he decides he can wait until Iwako wakes up. After a while, Iwako wakes up. Just the sight of Kyoichiro terrifies him so much that he crawls back, begging not to be killed. To this, Kyoichiro replies that he will not let him off so easily by killing him. Instead, he says he has some questions. He takes out Iwako's phone and asks about the last call he made to Lei. Looking through the history, he questions Iwako about what they were discussing. Awako obediently answers that Lei is coming to Japan in 3 days and that he believed she wanted to discuss some matters with him. Hearing this, Kyoichiro decides what he must do next. He gives Awako his phone back and tells him to treat her normally. He also warns him not to tell anyone about his true identity. He adds that when Awako was knocked out, he placed a spell on his heart that will activate if he reveals who Kyoichiro is. The spell, he says, will explode and kill Awako instantly. This thought terrifies Awako to his very core. As Kyoichiro walks away, he thinks to himself that he never actually placed such a spell. But knowing Awako's personality, he is sure that this bluff will work perfectly. He could have used absolute hypnosis on him, but chose not to, as he wants Awako to live in despair while still fully aware of himself. 3 days later, Lei is seen on an airplane coming to Japan. One of her guards informs her that they are almost there. Just as the attendant is about to make an announcement, the flight is interrupted. Terrorists attempt to hijack the plane. They pull out guns and order everyone to the floor. As they terrorize the passengers, Lei stands up and charges directly at them. She takes down the hijackers swiftly, before anyone can even process the situation. The people recognize her as a member of the Pentagram Saints. At the airport, the airline officials thank her for saving the passengers. Lei modestly replies that she was just lucky to be on the same plane, and thanks to that, the airline's reputation was spared from being tarnished. She also points out that the guns the terrorists used seemed to be made of a special material, which is why they were not detected by the scanners. She explains that many gangs are now using weapons made from dungeon materials. She tells the airline official that she would like to gear up her staff for security, placing her hand on his shoulder and indirectly threatening him to provide the gear she wants. Not wanting complications, the official agrees and promises to see it through. Lei walks away, giving him a thumbs up. As she leaves the airport, she makes a call, instructing someone to release the hijackers. Her guard comments that things went well. Lei smirks and replies that it was entertaining, since hiring the hijackers helped her secure the deal she wanted. Walking out, she is greeted by a crowd of fans. The incident, she realizes, was also useful for her publicity. From there, Lei heads straight to the place where her true business lies, the office of Awako. She enters, takes a seat, and asks him about the investigation he was conducting on the void attribute and how it has progressed. When Lei presses him about his progress, Iwako tells her it was nothing more than a dud, a false alarm. Just as she predicted, he appears to be a worthless failure. Hearing this, Lei expresses disappointment, saying she had hoped for something fun. She remarks that even if a unique attribute exists, it does not necessarily mean it will be special in the end. Throughout the conversation, Iwako stays intensely focused on not spilling the truth, as he is terrified the spell on his chest will activate and kill him. To avoid this, he responds calmly and carefully. Closing the conversation about the void attribute, Lei shifts to the main reason she came to Japan in the first place. It is related to a drug they have been developing for a long time. Now, the time has come to choose the next test subject. She tells Iwako he has made good use of the system so far. She continues discussing how to form a list of students for experimentation. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro, listening through his earpods, grows angry about what he hears. He quietly declares that Lei will be the next target of his revenge. Now at his home, Kyoichiro listens to the news and reviews the recent events caused by Lei Ruashi since her arrival in the country. She is also one of the people who betrayed him over 2 decades ago. Back then, she was already making things from dungeon materials, and from the looks of it, she has earned a fortune selling such items. But in the end, from her conversation with Iwako, it is clear she has come here to cause harm and continue doing evil things. On the surface, she plays the role of a hero, but behind the scenes, she is a sly fox who exploits others. With that kind of nature, Kyoichiro knows he cannot forgive her or let her off the hook so easily. However, he wonders how he should deal with her this time. Considering how tight the security already was when he entered the academy, he knows this won't be easy, and he needs to prepare carefully. While he is thinking, Asahi approaches him, asking what he is reading. Asahi comments that Lei is amazing for how she fought against the hijackers and mentions the Great Snake of Changsha, which is very famous. Hearing this, Kyoichiro asks her more about it. Asahi explains that this is the name of the clan Lei created and that its members are all powerful. Thinking back, Kyoichiro realizes that the men in black suits he saw earlier must have been members of this clan. Asahi adds that many students hope to join her clan or the military in the future. She then asks what Kyoichiro's plans are. He is about to answer, but suddenly gets an idea. If he joins the clan, he could get closer to Lei and achieve his goal. He thanks Asahi for her help, since she unknowingly gave him the answer he needed. Excited, he rushes away, leaving Asahi behind, confused about what she just helped him with. At Awako's office, the phone suddenly rings, startling him. He picks it up and finds that Kyoichiro is on the other end. Kyoichiro calmly tells Awako that there is something he needs him to do. Nervously, Awako asks what it is. Kyoichiro then explains the plan and instructs him on what to say if Lei calls. Meanwhile, in a testing lab filled with scientists, a student is tied up. The boy is in agony while the scientists discuss their work. Suddenly, the doors open, and Lei enters. She asks the student how he is feeling. Begging for mercy, the student pleads with her to stop injecting him with the drug, insisting that he will die at this rate. Before he can finish, Lei stomps on him, kicking him aside. She adds that there is no need to be terrified, because if the experiment succeeds and he proves compatible with the medicine, he will become far stronger than ever before. After this, she orders the scientists to continue. Despite the boy's cries and begging, they inject him with the drug again. This time, he suffers greatly and eventually dies. The scientists continue making reports based on their observations. Looking at the disappointing results, Lei concludes there is no point in these experiments unless they find subjects with a high level of magical proficiency. A guard tells her they will need more test subjects soon. Lei agrees and says they will handle it the same way as always, by opening a recruitment drive for the clan, which will only appear as a recruitment on the surface. With this, she calls Awako while riding the elevator. She tells him she needs samples of students with strong magical talent. Remembering his instructions, Iwako responds exactly as Kyoichiro had told him to. He suggests a plan to disguise the process as a selection at the academy to identify talented students. Hearing such a clever idea, Lei praises Iwako, saying that sometimes he can come up with good plans. Afterward, she decides on the date and time for the selection. Meanwhile, Iwako thinks to himself that he has done exactly what Kyoichiro instructed. The next day, the head guard enters the classroom to make an announcement. The Great Snake of Changsha clan will be holding a recruitment event at the academy to find potential recruits. The students immediately begin discussing how this is their chance to secure their futures. For Kyoichiro, however, it means something else. His path to Lei has finally opened. The selection campaign began on the scheduled day for joining the clan. The guard explained the procedure that all participants would go through. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro began forming a plan on how he would use these tests to get close to Lei. In his previous encounter with Awako, he had tried to remain in the shadows. However, this time the situation was different. He needed to get the attention of Yang Sinyu, Lei's right hand. This time, he was going to display his power. As Kyoichiro was thinking, Asahi approached him and asked if he was also taking the exam. She told him that although she knew she did not truly belong there, she had her own reasons for joining the test. Hearing this made Kyoichiro curious about what her reasons might be. The first test was to measure magical power. The device would light up and display how much power one possessed. When the test began, the results of the students were disappointing. Then came Kyoichiro's turn. He showed his card, and the examiner, expecting nothing from the void element, looked unimpressed. However, unlike his expectations, the light emitted was the brightest he had ever seen. The result was outstanding, and Kyoichiro was given an S grade for his display. The second test was for magical skill. Kyoichiro first created a lump of earth. The examiner doubted his ability, but his doubts were instantly blown away when Kyoichiro summoned all magical attributes at once and controlled them flawlessly. He wondered how those who once called the void element useless would feel now. Asahi came to him afterward and told him how amazing he was, and he wished her good luck for her test. When Asahi's test began, she demonstrated light magic by reviving dead plants. Most others did not take notice of it, but Kyoichiro was impressed that she possessed light magic. The examiners overlooked her talent, but he thought it best if she remained unnoticed for her own safety. However, Yang Sinyu, Lei's right hand, showed interest in her potential as a test subject. After all the preliminary tests, The final stage began, one-on-one duels. Yang Xinyu announced that they would be fighting members of the clan. The students became tense, worried about facing elite members, but were reassured that the evaluation would not depend solely on victory or defeat, but on how they fought. Confident that none of the students could possibly win, the clan members prepared themselves. Kyoichiro's duel began, and his examiner remarked that while he had shown good performance earlier, it would not help him in real combat. He then planned to eliminate Kyoichiro in a single strike using earth magic. However, Kyoichiro used wind magic to repel the attack effortlessly. The examiner was shocked that such a powerful strike was countered so easily. Before he could recover, Kyoichiro vanished from his sight, only to reappear instantly behind him with a knife made of water magic. This decisive move ended the duel. Kyoichiro mocked the examiner slightly, saying he had learned a lot from him in this match. The duel ended in Kyosuke's victory. Yang Xinyu was astonished by the result, questioning who this student could be, as he had surpassed every expectation. Later that night, he reported to Lei that the exam was over. Hearing this, she asked if there were any useful subjects. Yang Xinyu replied that there was one student who had cleared all the tests overwhelmingly, but that he used the void attribute. At the mention of void, Lei's excitement grew. She recalled Awako's investigation into a student with that attribute. Smiling slyly, she states that this new student is going to be really fun. In the student hall, Lei's right-hand man begins announcing the results of the exams they previously took for clan enrollment. After all the students gather, he proceeds with the list from top to bottom. He announces that the first position goes to Ase Kyosuke. The students start whispering among themselves, as everyone already expected him to take the top position. During the difficult exam, he had displayed an extraordinary level of power, leaving a strong impression. Kyosuke now feels that everything is going according to his plans, as his bold display turned out to be useful in impressing the examiners. He knows this puts him a step closer to Lei. However, his happiness turns to unease when the second position is announced. The second place is granted to none other than Asahi Karen. She is surprised to have achieved a higher rank than she expected. Kyoichiro grows worried about her being placed so high and selected as well. He wonders if her unique attributes played a larger role than he had believed in helping her clear the exam. Knowing Lei, he suspects she is planning something hidden, possibly using the students for a secret agenda. He believes there must be a reason behind Asahi being selected. As he ponders these thoughts, his worries are interrupted when Asahi smiles at him, clearly happy that she passed, and that they both achieved high positions. Seeing her joy relieves Kyoichiro of his doubts. He reminds himself there is no need to overthink. He will not allow anyone to harm her. His focus must remain on protecting her and securing his own goals. Sometime later, at the Japan branch of Lei's company, the announcement of the Great Snake Changshan clan recruitment exam has brought the successful students together. Lei's right-hand man welcomes them, stating that they will now be taken to a facility for basic checks before officially joining the clan. He also informs them that the clan leader, Lei herself, will join them soon. Kyoichiro tenses upon hearing this, determined to face her, though he knows he cannot leave Asahi unguarded just yet. The guide explains that Lei will meet them after they complete the facility check, then instructs them to follow him as he shows them around. While walking, Kyoichiro thinks about confronting Lei immediately, but restrains himself, as his first priority is keeping Asahi safe. Meanwhile, Asahi looks around with curiosity and tells Kyosuke that being in such a large building makes anyone nervous, though she is happy to be joining the clan soon. Out of curiosity, Kyoichiro asks her why she wants to join. She reveals that her mother is currently hospitalized, and the high medical expenses are difficult to manage. She believes joining the clan will help her ease the burden. Moved by this, Kyoichiro decides he must do everything possible to protect her. After a while, the guide shows them a staircase leading down. Kyoichiro finds it suspicious that the facility lies in the basement. As they descend, he quickly realizes that it is a testing facility. His suspicion grows stronger. Suddenly, the doors close behind them, startling the students. Kyoichiro immediately understands. They never intended to let anyone leave so easily. Their serious preparations confirm this. One of the students nervously asks what is happening. The man who guided them suddenly changes his tone, speaking harshly and telling them to remain silent. His intimidating behavior terrifies the students. Lei's right-hand man, while picking something up, explains that as mentioned earlier, they will undergo the proper procedure to check their suitability. Holding a vial and an injection, he clarifies that they will be testing the compatibility of a new drug developed in secret. He explains that the drug is made from rare materials found in different dungeons. It has the potential to enhance one's power, whether physical strength or magical ability. At first, some students respond positively, saying it sounds beneficial, but one of them nervously asks whether it has any side effects. The man smiles coldly and says it will be faster to show them the truth rather than explain. He points to a display screen, which suddenly plays a recording of the last test subject, tied up and desperately begging not to be injected again. The students stare in shock at the disturbing video clip, where the last person exposed to the drug suffered a painful end. Horrified, the students begin to protest, demanding answers about what they were just shown. Lei's right-hand man explains coldly that the recording displayed a test subject who was not compatible with their new drug, and those were the results. He asks if this answers their questions now. Realizing they are being used as test subjects, with the risk of dying from the experiment, the students angrily declare that they will never take such a drug. Two of the students summon their magic and attack simultaneously, demanding to be released from the facility. Kyoichiro, observing the chaos, quickly tells Asahi to come to his side and not leave him. The two students rush forward to strike, but the guard enhances his fist with skill and knocks both of them out in a single blow. Asahi watches in fear as the situation worsens. The two fallen students groan in pain on the ground. His eyes then fall on Asahi. Looking at her with a calculating grin, he suggests they should start with her instead. He mutters that he is curious to see the results, especially since she wields the rare light attribute. Terrified, Asahi freezes as he approaches her, but before he can reach her, Kyoichiro steps forward and blocks his path. The guard narrows his eyes and demands to know what Kyoichiro thinks he's doing. Calm but firm, Kyoichiro replies, "Nothing. Just keeping lowlifes like you away from her." The insult enrages him. He orders the others in the room to hold Kyoichiro down. Several well-built fighters step forward, confident that defeating a mere scholar will be easy. They charge in with full force, aiming to take him down in one strike. But their attacks land only on an afterimage. Kyoichiro has already evaded. Before they can even react, he delivers sharp, enhanced chops, knocking them unconscious instantly. The remaining two become wary after witnessing this, but even their caution proves useless. Kyoichiro dashes forward, striking both in the stomach with precision. They collapse in defeat. Their leader is stunned by the overwhelming display of strength and skill. He had never imagined Kyoichiro could defeat his men in single blows. Shocked, he starts to panic, realizing the situation is slipping out of his control. Kyoichiro turns to him and declares that he is next. Unable to face him directly, the leader instead rushes toward Asahi, intending to capture her as a hostage and test subject. But before he can lay a hand on her, Kyoichiro intercepts him and seizes his wrist with an iron grip. The man struggles desperately to break free, but Kyoichiro's hold does not loosen. "I already warned you," Kyoichiro says coldly. "You will not touch her." He releases the man's wrist, leaving him stumbling backward in fear. The leader is shaken to his core, terrified at how a mere student could accomplish such feats, something he believed should have been impossible. Just as the realization sinks in, Kyoichiro fixes his gaze on him and warns, "Brace yourself." Now at the facility, Lei's right-hand man, Yang, appears tense. At the same time, Kyoichiro instructs Asahi to stay behind him. Asahi, standing behind him for safety, thinks about how much stronger he has become. Earlier, she couldn't even follow his movements. She had an idea that he had grown powerful, but to this extent was beyond her imagination. Yang tries to intimidate him, warning him not to get cocky. But Kyoichiro challenges him with a question: why are the students of the academy being used as test subjects in the first place? Yang smiles and replies that it is not complicated. He explains that everything is for the sake of their clan and for Clan Master Lei. Once the testing and preparation of the drugs are complete, Lei will gain strength beyond imagination. Kyoichiro asks if he truly believes such inhumane actions are worth it for a small dream. But Yang, unbothered, insists that they use whatever is available to them without hesitation. He adds that those used as samples should consider it an honor to serve as pawns for the clan's glory. Hearing this enrages Kyoichiro. He remembers Asahi, who joined for a reason, to support her family, and how happy she and others were when selected. Many, like her, had dreams, but those dreams were crushed by the clan's selfish desires. The sheer cruelty of Lei's ideology pushes Kyoichiro past his limits. Yang continues arrogantly, saying that the girl behind him will become their new moon. That final insult causes Kyoichiro to snap. He shouts at Yang to shut up, his anger exploding as he releases an immense surge of mana and energy. Shockwaves ripple through the room, pushing everything back. Kyoichiro declares furiously that they are nothing but trash who trample over lives without ever understanding the hopes and dreams of others. Yang staggers under the crushing pressure of the young man's energy. For the first time, he questions if Kyoichiro is really just a student with such extraordinary power. Seeing no other options, Yang changes tactics. He says that normally, he would order Kyoichiro to remember his place as a student, but after seeing such courage and power, he offers him a proposal: join Lei. If he hands over the girl, Lei will be greatly pleased, and Kyoichiro will be rewarded with an excellent position in the clan. Kyoichiro, already filled with rage, rejects him outright. He says he has no need to hear worthless words from trash like them. With negotiations over, Yang warns that Kyoichiro will regret this decision. Realizing he must fight, he harnesses mana to strengthen his body. His aura grows heavier as he powers up. Kyoichiro recognizes the technique immediately. It is strengthening magic. Yang confirms it with pride, boasting that with his polished martial arts combined with strengthening magic, he possesses an unbeatable combo. He rushes forward, throwing a powerful punch. Kyoichiro dodges, but the strike lands on the ground, shattering it and sending shockwaves across the room. Asahi gasps in fear. Yang rises again, surprised that Kyoichiro managed to dodge. Analyzing his opponent carefully, Kyoichiro acknowledges that strengthening magic is indeed formidable. But after observing the flow of mana, he begins to form a plan. Yang, ready to attack again, closes in on Kyoichiro, shouting at him to stop running away. As Yang prepares to land another strike, Kyoichiro begins focusing his void magic, carefully concentrating while imagining the spell he needs to counter the strengthening magic. Yang rushes toward him, noticing that Kyoichiro seems to be preparing something. He wonders if the boy is truly planning a counterattack, or if he has simply given up, realizing he has no way to overcome Yang's overwhelming strength. Convinced of victory, Yang throws a punch, believing this will end the battle. But at the very last moment, Kyoichiro activates his void magic. The spell is complete. To Yang's shock, his devastating punch, strong enough to break through almost anything, is stopped by Kyoichiro's bare hand. He stares in disbelief, realizing that Kyoichiro is now using the same strengthening magic as him, but even stronger. Kyoichiro remarks calmly that it seems he can do these tricks too now. He thanks Yang, explaining that he was able to learn this magic by observing and imagining it through him. Taking a single step back, Kyoichiro unleashes a powerful blow that sends Yang flying into the air. Yang crashes back down to the ground with a heavy thud. Before losing consciousness, Yang's mind reels. There is no way he could be bested in his own specialty. He wonders if Kyoichiro is really just a kid, or if he is something far more monstrous in strength. With everyone in the facility defeated, Asahi runs to Kyoichiro. He asks if she is all right, and she nods. Meanwhile, the other students who had been hurt begin slowly getting back on their feet. Kyoichiro tells them he will open up a path so they can escape the place safely. Confused, they ask what he means and where he intends to go. Without hesitation, Kyoichiro strikes the heavy door, breaking through and creating an exit for them. As he turns toward his own direction, he tells them he has his own plans to follow for now. At the same time, Lei is informed about the worsening situation. She is told that Yang and the others have been defeated and that the students are escaping. Shocked that her trusted people could be overpowered so easily, she demands more details. But the guards can only report that an incredibly strong individual is heading toward her. Before they can say more, their voice is cut off as they are swiftly taken down by the unknown intruder. Confused and unsettled, Lei rises, trying to comprehend what is happening inside her own facility. Suddenly, the door to her office opens, and Kyoichiro steps inside. Lei narrows her eyes and asks who he is and for what purpose he has come. Kyoichiro walks forward calmly and replies, "The reason I'm here is simple. I've come to pay you back for what you did to me 2 decades ago." Lei appears confused, unsure what kind of debt Kyoichiro could mean from 2 decades ago. Seeing her expression, Kyoichiro steps closer and asks if she truly doesn't understand. Should he explain what debt he is referring to? He begins, saying that ever since the raid of the SSS rank dungeon, the so-called Saints of the Pentagram have been living comfortably. The mention of that raid immediately darkens Lei's expression with unpleasant memories. Kyoichiro continues, hinting at their claim of stopping a certain man's conspiracy that day. Annoyed, Lei asks if he is really trying to give her a history lecture. She insists that the Saints of the Pentagram are heroes who vanquished evil in order to preserve the world. Because of their work, they now hold influence across the globe, watching over many areas. She demands to know what he truly understands to speak against them. Kyoichiro cuts her off, saying that even if the world views them as heroes, the truth is far from it. His words unsettle her, especially as the aura around him changes. In a darker tone, he tells her that they sacrificed their own comrade for selfish reasons, just to reap rewards and build their names. He accuses them of trampling on the lives and dreams of others for their own gain, both then and now. Lei laughs mockingly, calling his words nothing more than conspiracy theories spread by jealous people after their success. But Kyoichiro firmly denies it. He says these are no fabrications, he knows what they did. He reveals that he knows how they pushed their own comrade into the dungeon gate after the boss had been defeated. This revelation shocks her. That knowledge was supposed to be a secret shared only by the remaining members of that raid party. Seeing her confusion, Kyoichiro steps forward and asks if she truly has no idea who he is by now. He declares, "I am Misato Kyoichiro, the same Kyoichiro you and the others pushed into the gate 20 years ago, after I defeated the boss." Lei is stunned, unable to believe what she is hearing. In her panic, Kyoichiro adds, "What you feared most has happened. You once called me a monster for reaching level 100 with the time attribute. I used that same power to return." Fear flickers across Lei's face, but Kyoichiro presses further. He warns her that he knows exactly what she and her company have been doing in secret. If he exposes it to the public, she would be ruined instantly. Enraged, Lei snaps, demanding if he is trying to mock her. Kyoichiro retorts coldly that she should be the one answering for her crimes, both for betraying him 2 decades ago and for trampling on the hopes of others, like the young girl who gave her all. He declares that he will never forgive her. Lei smirks and tells him not to get too arrogant. She claims that he is no longer in the same refined body he once had. Reaching for a weapon near her desk, she warns him that showing himself before her was a mistake. Grabbing a staff, she activates a skill and unleashes multiple strikes in a single attack, shattering the entire room. With a twisted smile, she asks what he thinks of her weapon, explaining it was forged using rare materials from high-level dungeons, making it harder than steel itself. She boasts that he will soon see how deadly and sharp it is. Rushing forward, Lei thrusts the weapon at high speed again and again. But Kyoichiro dodges every attack effortlessly, not taking a single scratch. Lei sneers that all he can do now is dodge without his former body, though inwardly she is frustrated that none of her strikes are landing. After evading her flurry of attacks, Kyoichiro remarks that he now understands why she is slower. He points out that she has spent too long as a corporate queen, becoming sloppy and far less sharp than she used to be. He even mocks her by saying she is now on the same level as Awako. Being compared to someone she considers weak infuriates her. In a frenzy, she swings wildly, attacking over and over. At last, one of her strikes seems to connect, but it turns out to be only an afterimage. Kyoichiro is standing far behind her, completely unharmed. She realizes void magic is behind his evasion, but its effectiveness at this level shocks her. Determined to finish the fight, she enhances her weapon with fire, planning to end it with her next attack. She charges at him again, thrusting with all her power. But Kyoichiro stops her weapon effortlessly, with just 2 fingers. Lei freezes, horrified that her enhanced strike was blocked so easily. Kyoichiro looks her in the eyes and says coldly that she is far weaker than she was 20 years ago if this is the best she can manage. Cornered, Lei considers her last resort. Dropping her weapon, she runs to her desk. Kyoichiro watches cautiously, uncertain of her plan, until he sees her reach for an unfinished vial of the new drug. To his surprise, she takes the gamble and injects herself with it. Instantly, her mana begins to surge violently. Kyoichiro realizes she is truly willing to go this far to stop him, transforming her into something monstrous. Now Lei had completely transformed into a monster after injecting herself with the drug. Gaining newfound confidence, she declared that no one could defeat her now. But Kyoichiro calmly asked if she was really serious about fighting him while relying on drugs. Did she truly think it would be that simple? Lei warned him not to underestimate her. She explained that she had spent enormous amounts of time and money perfecting this drug, gathering materials from the depths of dungeons and refining them for years into a single formula. She admitted it all began when she witnessed his immense power during the raid 20 years ago. From that moment, she had been chasing power, determined to reach the same domain. She even thanked him for showing her that path, boasting that now she had surpassed everyone. Kyoichiro dismissed her words as pathetic. He told her it was laughable that she believed she had surpassed others just because of a drug. Angered by his insult, Lei prepared herself, vowing to show him who was truly stronger after 2 decades. Kyoichiro sighed, saying he was already bored of her monologue and that it was time to end this. Lei charged forward, but missed, slamming into a wall and causing massive damage. She bragged about the destructive fruits of her research, claiming she would send him to the afterlife. Rushing in again, she managed to push him back. Thinking she had finally won, she looked down, only to realize her foot had been pierced by an ice spear. Kyoichiro revealed that he had set the trap during her attack. Lei was shocked to see him using Yang's technique and demanded to know how he had learned it. Kyoichiro explained it was thanks to her subordinate that he was able to master it earlier than planned. Stepping closer, he told her that while her drug was impressive, it produced nothing more than a momentary gust of power. Lei shouted in fury, accusing him of disrespecting her life's work. But Kyoichiro grew even angrier. He declared that she had trampled over countless people for her selfish desires and still had the audacity to call it progress. He told her she made him sick. Humiliated, Lei launched herself at him in blind rage. But Kyoichiro countered easily, grabbing her and driving his knee into her stomach. Her unstable power quickly faded, and she collapsed unconscious, her last thoughts on the terrifying new Kyoichiro, whose limitless potential was even more dangerous than his past self with a single attribute. As he left, Kyoichiro remarked coldly that her power was never real to begin with. With this, 2 of the 5 targets in his quest for revenge were now defeated. Outside, Asahi rushed to him, asking if he was all right. At the same time, news anchors swarmed the area, chasing reports that Lei's office had been attacked. Asahi turned to him, asking if he was responsible. Kyoichiro simply replied, "Who can say?" He knew that the truth about Lei's company and its cruel experiments would soon be exposed. With her downfall, many people would finally be safe, and everything she had built over a lifetime would crumble. Asahi called out to him. She admitted that earlier she had been too confused to say it, but now she wanted him to know. Without him, she would not still be standing there. She thanked him deeply for protecting her. Kyoichiro reflected silently. Once, words like those had meant everything to him. They had been his reason to push forward in his previous life. That night, the news exploded with revelations about Lei's company. The truth about their secret experiments and underground facilities where people had been used as test subjects. Reports claimed that someone had stopped her before she could erase the evidence, though the identity of the assailant was unknown. It was also revealed that Lei was now suffering from memory issues and had been placed in medical care. Kyoichiro wondered how the other saints would react to this turn of events. Just as he thought about it, breaking news appeared. An emergency announcement from Nathaniel of the Pentagram Saints. Hearing the name shocked him. At the press conference, Nathaniel declared that on behalf of the Pentagram Saints, they were devastated by Lei's actions and her inhumane research. He apologized, saying that although she had once been their comrade, they had failed to see the darkness lurking within her. Kyoichiro's anger flared. He recognized the act. They were playing the innocent card again, just as they had when they branded him a traitor 20 years ago. They hadn't changed one bit. To them, ordinary people were not lives to protect, but stepping stones to secure their reputation as heroes. He realized that Nathaniel must have been the one to spark hatred among the clan back then, leading to his betrayal. Even now, Nathaniel was calculating, his whereabouts always shrouded in mystery. Determined, Kyoichiro decided on his next move and made a call. Meanwhile, in a distant sanctuary, a messenger reported the conference to Saintess Claudia. Hearing the news, she clasped her hands and prayed for the future. Elsewhere, another member, Ingolf, was training in his room when he was told that a meeting was about to begin. Furious at Lei for creating such a mess, he prepared himself. Soon, the members of the Pentagram Saints gathered, Nathaniel appearing on the screen before them. Once all were assembled, he formally began the meeting of the Pentagram Saints Council. After a long discussion and debate, the council members agree with the statement that an assailant seeking revenge had attacked Lei and exposed the experiments she had been conducting. Ingolf is genuinely furious, enraged that she had been carrying out such secret actions behind their backs, tarnishing the honor and reputation of the Pentagram Saints. Concluding the matter, Nathaniel states that the experiments were Lei's doing alone, carried out on her own accord, and that the rest of them had no knowledge of her activities during that time. Iwako listens silently, but his thoughts turn dark. He reflects that Nathaniel always behaves this way, making seemingly rational judgments while easily shifting blame. It is clear to him that Nathaniel is abandoning Lei to protect the group. While others may truly have been unaware of her secret experiments, Iwako is certain Nathaniel knew about them and their results all along. The realization unsettles him. Even his comrades, who were all connected to the betrayal of Kyoichiro, prove themselves unreliable when one of their own is in trouble. Still, he sets aside these thoughts, reminding himself that he has a task to complete. Claudia, meanwhile, wonders aloud about the identity of the assailant strong enough to defeat one of their combat-oriented members. Taking his cue, Iwako speaks up. He says he has something to report. Earlier, he received a letter from the very person claiming responsibility for defeating Lei. Nathaniel orders him to read it aloud. Iwako opens the letter, which declares, "I have returned to the present world from within that gate. Now I will deal with all of you. Wait for me. Misato Kyoichiro." The name stuns the council. Claudia suggests it could be an imposter using his name to intimidate them. But Nathaniel immediately rejects the idea, explaining that no outsider could claim such knowledge about the gate unless they had truly been there. Considering the situation with Lei, he concludes that it must indeed be Kyoichiro who has finally returned. Claudia theorizes that perhaps time magic explains his survival. Ingolf interrupts, saying that if Kyoichiro truly is back, all they need to do is send him away again. Nathaniel agrees, saying Ingolf's view is correct. He decides they will not make any move for now since Kyoichiro poses no immediate threat. Instead, they will observe his actions and see what plans he intends to carry out. After the meeting, Ingolf gazes at the sky, haunted by old memories. He mutters that Kyoichiro is the one person he can never forgive, his tone revealing a personal grudge that remains unresolved to this day. Back at another location, Iwako contacts Kyoichiro and informs him of the council's discussion and their current plans. Kyoichiro, unsurprised, already knew Nathaniel would not move recklessly. Still, he understands that once the fear of his return grows too large, they will be forced to act. For now, he decides to target those whose whereabouts he already knows. He instructs Iwako to help with his next plan. Iwako asks what is needed. Kyoichiro replies that it is simple. He wants arrangements made for him to be transferred to the academy connected to Ingolf. Realizing the implication, Iwako knows Kyoichiro is now going after Ingolf. Kyoichiro confirms it, explaining that with the excuse of a short-term overseas exchange program, he can infiltrate the German academy. Iwako cautions him, saying Ingolf is not like Lei and may not have any obvious weaknesses to exploit. Kyoichiro listens but replies that regardless, he needs to face him at least once. He leaves the necessary documentation to Iwako to handle. Stepping outside to clear his mind, Kyoichiro reflects. Even if Ingolf has not committed recent wrongs, the fact remains that he betrayed him 20 years ago, alongside the others. Soon after, he boards a plane. Watching from a distance, Asahi smiles as the aircraft departs. After landing, Kyoichiro finally arrives in Germany under the student exchange plan. He has already studied Ingolf's connections and the academy in detail. His plan is clear. Use the academy as a way to get close to Ingolf. For now, he decides to head to the academy directly. On his way, he hears a commotion. Investigating, he finds a group of men bothering a girl. Taking a closer look, he realizes the girl is Japanese. To better understand the situation despite the language barrier, he uses void magic to develop a translation skill. With this, he learns that the drunken locals are trying to force themselves on her. The girl refuses, standing her ground, but the men persist and even reach for her shoulder. She prepares to fight back, but before the conflict escalates, Kyoichiro steps in. He orders them to waste their time elsewhere and leave her alone. The men turn toward him angrily, demanding to know who he thinks he is. Calmly, Kyoichiro tells them again to back off. Insulted, they rush at him, using magic and shouting for him not to underestimate them. As they close in, Kyoichiro counters with a gust of wind magic, repelling them and sending them flying back in an instant. The girl stares in astonishment, seeing how easily he defeated them in a single move. She wonders to herself just who this mysterious student really is. After being defeated in a single blow, the punks panic and run away, apologizing for messing with them in the first place. The girl steps closer and thanks Kyoichiro for saving her. He suggests they change locations since a crowd has started gathering around them. The girl follows him, thinking it has been a long time since she was rescued by someone like this. She recalls that the last time she was saved was by another person. While walking, she once again expresses her gratitude, saying that because of him the situation didn't escalate and no real harm was caused. Kyoichiro tells her not to make a big deal out of it. He was only doing what needed to be done. He quietly wonders if she is the conscientious type, while also feeling as though he has seen her somewhere before. Just as he is lost in thought, she points out his uniform and asks if he is a Japanese student. He confirms it, explaining that he is on a short-term exchange program and was actually on his way to the academy. At this, the girl offers to lead him there as thanks for earlier. He accepts, appreciating the sentiment, and allows her to guide him. As they walk, she tells him she is traveling around the world due to certain personal circumstances. Kyoichiro is surprised. She seems to be about the same age as his current body, yet she is traveling alone. He considers this unusual and even risky. He tells her that traveling alone must be dangerous, making her more likely to run into situations like the one earlier. She brushes it off, saying she is fine and that despite appearances, she can use magic as well. Kyoichiro then wonders aloud why she was caught off guard before. She avoids the question and instead asks if he is studying at the academy. Curious about a traveler's opinion, Kyoichiro asks if there is anything unusual about the place. She explains that the academy is very popular for its strict merit-based system. Students there believe strongly in the hierarchy established by rankings and achievements. There is also a point system that rewards success. Hearing this, Kyoichiro realizes how seriously the academy takes such matters, far more extreme than schools in Japan. From Awako's information, he already knows that Ingolf often teaches classes for the elite upper-class students. To get close to Ingolf, Kyoichiro understands he will need to make a big impact in this merit-based system. The thought excites him, as he enjoys challenges. After their journey, the girl points toward the academy. Kyoichiro thanks her for both the guidance and the information. Before parting, she remembers to introduce herself. Her name is Shirato Seoki. In return, Kyoichiro introduces himself as Ase Kaisuk. The name shocks her, as though it reminded her of something. When he notices her reaction and asks what's wrong, she simply replies that his name is familiar to someone she once knew. With that, they part ways, and she wishes him luck at the academy. After she leaves, Kyoichiro can't shake the feeling that something about her sticks in his mind. Still, he puts the thought aside and heads toward the academy. The academy itself appears neat and orderly. As he walks across a bridge, a student who had been waiting calls out, asking if he is the Japanese transfer student. The boy arrogantly tells Kyoichiro to come closer. Kyoichiro responds respectfully, asking who he is, and calls him a delinquent. Insulted, the boy demands to know who he is calling a delinquent. He steps forward, sneering that Japanese students don't come around often and questions if Kyoichiro could possibly be anything special. Trying to assert dominance, he warns Kyoichiro not to get the wrong idea about this academy. He says he will give him a basic rundown of the hierarchy here. Kyoichiro sighs, wondering why he is already running into troublemakers so soon after arriving. He recalls Sayuki's warning about the merit-based system and realizes the boy is trying to test him. Throwing his bag aside, Kyoichiro says he is ready to take him on. The boy grins, saying it's good that Kyoichiro understands quickly. Preparing his magic, he declares the fight is starting now. He uses earth magic, launching countless stones at Kyoichiro like a spray of bullets. But Kyoichiro easily deflects every attack without difficulty, stopping them midair. The boy stares in shock, clearly not expecting his magic to be countered so effortlessly. Kyoichiro remarks that while the quantity of the attack was decent, the power behind it was weak. He then prepares his own counter. Channeling his magic, Kyoichiro unleashes a devastating strike of earth magic that shatters nearby walls. He tells the student, "At the very least, it should look like this." The stunned boy looks at him in horror, wondering why such a monster is here. Elsewhere, Sayuki is seen on a call. She reports that she has made contact with Ase Kayasuk. Speaking to Claudia, she says she will remain in Germany for now and continue to observe the target. Now in Germany, at the Lanzig Training Academy, we find Kyoichiro at the reception desk, receiving his student card after completing the necessary paperwork for his transfer. With the basics done, he now has permission to enter the country's dungeons. Examining the card, he uses void magic to translate the details and notices it is different from the ones he had in Japan. He sees the additional point value section that Shirato had told him about earlier. From this, he realizes the cards track a student's dungeon records and performance. Since he has no classes scheduled for the day, Kyoichiro decides to explore the dungeons in Germany to understand their nature. Leaving the academy, he heads toward a dungeon, but someone is trailing him. It turns out to be the same boy who had lost the duel to him earlier. Sometime later, in the city, Kyoichiro arrives at a dungeon portal. Staring at the gate, he thinks to himself that the only way to get closer to Ingolf is to rank up his classes as quickly as possible. To test himself, he chooses an upper-tier dungeon. He enters, finding not a cave, but a ruined structure serving as the dungeon's form. Intrigued, he wonders what kind of monsters Germany's dungeons will hold. Soon, skeletons wreathed in flames emerge to attack him. Kyoichiro instantly recognizes them as undead monsters, stronger than the creatures he faced in Japan. Still, he knows their weak points. After all, this is not his first battle against such foes. He has fought countless monsters before, learning and adapting to their natures. One skeleton swings its weapon at him, but he dodges with ease. Calmly, he notes that the weaknesses of undead creatures are fire attribute magic or blunt attacks that shatter their bodies. Luckily, he has both options available. First, he enhances himself with strengthening magic. Then, with a single punch, he smashes the monster apart. The remaining undead freeze, almost as if confused about who the real monster is. Smirking, Kyoichiro taunts them to attack. Before long, he clears all the undead in the ruins and advances toward the boss chamber, knowing it should be waiting there. Inside, he finds the boss, a lich, floating in the air, surrounded by wandering souls. Deciding to test its strength, he begins with a fireball spell, launching it at the lich. The boss cancels it instantly. Kyoichiro narrows his eyes, but isn't surprised. Such resistance should be expected from a dungeon boss. The lich points its staff at him, releasing a spell that spreads thick miasma across the chamber. Kyoichiro dodges casually, though he notes with interest that the miasma melts everything it touches. A dangerous ability, but also something he might use to his advantage. The lich follows up with more attacks. Kyoichiro condenses wind magic around his feet, boosting his speed and propulsion. Leaping across the chamber, he bounces off the floor and walls while evading the incoming spells. After several movements, he finally closes the distance, preparing to strike the boss directly. While preparing his spell, Kyoichiro taunts the lich boss, asking if it can survive a taste of its own medicine. With that, he casts the same corrosive magic back at it. The boss suffers under the spell, its body breaking down as it begins to fade away. Kyoichiro steps back and watches as the lich is defeated. He notes that the spell had a strong impact, but because it was a high-tier magical technique, he couldn't replicate it perfectly with his current ability. He realizes he must raise his void magic as far as possible, but sets the thought aside. There are more important matters to handle now. Looking to the shadows, he calls out and tells him to show himself. The person steps forward. It is the boy he had defeated earlier. The boy admits he hadn't expected to be caught and claims he was only observing Kyoichiro's performance. He asks if Kyoichiro minds. Kyoichiro narrows his eyes and asks if he wants another duel, wondering if he had been too lenient last time since the boy doesn't seem to have learned his lesson. But something about his behavior feels suspicious. Closing the distance, Kyoichiro warns him to clear things up so there are no misunderstandings in the future. The boy reaches into his pocket, and Kyoichiro tenses, suspecting a weapon, or worse, another enhancement like Lay's drug. But instead, the boy does something completely unexpected. He kneels down and begs Kyoichiro to take him as his disciple. Kyoichiro is stunned into silence. He can't believe what he's seeing. The boy holds out a small cup, leaving Kyoichiro even more confused. The boy explains that it's supposed to represent a Japanese Dajiza gesture of respect, which is why he brought it. Kyoichiro wonders if the boy is an idiot. The boy, however, insists earnestly that he was drawn in by Kyoichiro's overwhelming strength and now wants him to teach him magic. Kyoichiro asks if he's joking, but the boy continues to pledge his sincerity, admitting that after seeing the earlier fight, he feels like a fool for ever challenging him in the first place. Kyoichiro sighs, realizing the situation has suddenly become much more complicated. Just as they're speaking, he senses something strange. Placing a hand on the boy's shoulder, Kyoichiro readies himself. The boy thinks Kyoichiro is about to accept him as his disciple, but before he can finish his words, a sudden attack strikes from out of nowhere, carrying devastating force. From the darkness emerges a massive monster, far stronger than the lich Kyoichiro had just defeated. Realization dawns on him. The creature from before wasn't the true final boss. The real one has arrived now. Kyoichiro steps forward, ready to face the monster, while the boy beside him trembles in fear. Staring at the massive beast, the boy recalls something he once read in the academy manuals. He tells Kyoichiro that the creature is a skull dragon, a monster so powerful it once wiped out entire villages long ago. He adds that according to the records, Ingolf had barely managed to defeat one in the past. Confused and terrified, the boy wonders why such a creature would appear here now. Kyoichiro listens calmly to his explanation and prepares to fight. The boy panics, asking if he really intends to go up against the skull dragon alone. He tries to stop him, calling it reckless to face a monster that even the saints struggled against. But Kyoichiro tells him to sit back and relax. With a sharp look, he also adds that, for the record, it wasn't Ingolf who defeated that dragon back then. The boy looks shocked, unsure of what he means. Kyoichiro thinks to himself that when the group of pentagram saints was formed, they found it convenient to erase his name from history. They twisted the story so they could claim the glory, becoming heroes, while he was cast aside. He smirks bitterly, thinking about how they've lived comfortably all this time, typical cowards. Now, with the skull dragon before him once again, Kyoichiro decides, if it has returned, he will simply kill it again. A sense of déjà vu washes over him. The beast roars and charges forward, slamming into the ground and sending shockwaves through the ruins. The boy cries out in panic, but Kyoichiro steps up to block the force of the attack. He realizes the monster is even stronger than it was 2 decades ago. Still, it doesn't matter. This time, he has far more options at his disposal. He rushes in, conjuring multiple spells with his void attribute, layering them rapidly. Closing the distance, he combines fire magic with strengthening magic and delivers a powerful strike to the skull dragon. The impact forces the monster back, giving Kyoichiro room to retreat and reassess. The boy erupts in excitement, praising Kyoichiro's strength, shouting that he's the best as his magic blew the dragon away. Kyoichiro, however, remains calm, wondering why the boy has suddenly become so energetic when moments ago he was begging him not to fight. He tells him not to celebrate too soon. The monster is not dead. Sure enough, the skull dragon rises again, letting out an earth-shaking howl. To the boy's horror, its broken body begins to regenerate. Kyoichiro explains that skull dragons, as undead monsters, have immense stamina. If they are struck with half-hearted attacks, they simply heal themselves and continue fighting. The boy asks how Kyoichiro knows so much about the creature. Kyoichiro frowns, realizing the dragon is even tougher than he expected. If his earlier attempt failed, then he'll need to proceed with his next plan of action. The boy stares blankly, wondering what else Kyoichiro could possibly try. He can't imagine how anyone could defeat such a monster alone. The dragon lets out another deafening roar and launches into another series of attacks, forcing both of them on the defensive. Kyoichiro parries and deflects the heavy blows while keeping the boy out of danger. But even as he holds the line, Kyoichiro is secretly preparing something. Channeling his void attribute, he sharpens and refines the mental image of his next spell. The clearer and more detailed his visualization, the more powerful the magic will become. The monster lunged forward, opening its massive jaws, and unleashed a devastating beam of energy. The student cried out in panic, running toward Kyoichiro, certain he had been struck head-on. But to his shock, Kyoichiro stood firm, gripping the skull dragon's mouth with his bare hands. Calmly, he activated the new magic he had just developed. In an instant, the monster's insides began to freeze. The chilling power spread rapidly, encasing the creature's body. Within seconds, the enormous beast was frozen solid, unable to move. Kyoichiro lowered his arm and declared coldly, "It's over." The student stared in awe at the incredible display, unable to believe Kyoichiro had defeated a calamity-class monster single-handedly. Outside the dungeon, Mateo hurried after him, calling for him to wait. Kyoichiro raised an eyebrow, asking why his tone had suddenly changed. Mateo explained that it was out of respect. After witnessing such strength, he now saw Kyoichiro as his master. As Kyoichiro glanced down at his student card, Mateo noticed and asked if something had caught his eye. Kyoichiro replied that he was wondering how many points he had earned from that run. Finally, Kyoichiro addressed him by name and asked just how important points were for class rankings. Mateo thought for a moment before explaining. There's no exact system, but in general, you need about 10,000 points to rank up a class. That means around 30,000 points are required to qualify for the special class. Kyoichiro frowned slightly. Mateo continued, "The worst part is that dungeon points are fixed. Even though we defeated a skull dragon, it won't give you anything extra. This run earned you about 500 points. Kyoichiro did the math quickly. 600 dungeons, just to qualify? He sighed, realizing the long road ahead. Mateo, watching his reaction, asked, "Are you also aiming for the special class?" Then, with a grin, he added, "If so, there's a shortcut to stacking points faster." Kyoichiro immediately closed the distance between them, his expression sharp. "Spill it." Startled at how close Kyoichiro's face was, Mateo quickly explained. "There's an event in 1 month. It's a competition where students face assigned challenges. The winner earns 20,000 points directly." Kyoichiro's eyes lit up. 20,000 points in one strike. That was far beyond what he had expected. If he could secure first place at this festival, he could close the gap to special class far quicker than anticipated. Clenching his fist with determination, he made up his mind. Then I'll take first place at this so-called Sublime Heaven Festival. After a month, the day for the Sublime Heaven Festival event at the Academy finally arrived. In the Academy, the festival was officially announced to begin as the students listened to the management. Kyoichiro's new servant was also excited about it since the long-awaited event had finally come. Kyoichiro had planned to gather as many points as he could during this festival so that he could secure the top spot and quickly enter the special class. Once he achieved that, he would be one step closer to confronting one of the people who had betrayed him 2 decades ago. The management announced the mission and the rules. The main objective for the students was to claim the gemstone placed at the top of the tower. They had to climb the maze-like tower to reach it, and that was the only rule of the challenge. The method they used, along with any tricks or strategies, was entirely up to them. Whether they climbed straight up or played dirty, the only requirement was to show the strength they had honed until now. After listening to the rules, Kyoichiro smiled since this was exactly what he had expected from the academy. Fortunately, it also suited his taste. At that moment, a red-haired boy asked if they were planning to take the first spot, warming up as he spoke. Kyoichiro looked at him and thought back to when he learned that the event would require teams of 2. At first, He was worried and unsure what to do, as he didn't know many people. However, fortune seemed to smile upon him since he already had the perfect partner at hand. When he ordered the boy to pair up with him, the boy was so delighted that he bowed deeply to Kyoichiro. While warming up, someone approached them. Kyoichiro looked over and was surprised to see Shirato attending the event. She told him that since it was such a fun occasion to watch, she thought of taking a detour to enjoy her time there. Seeing her, Kyoichiro's new disciple jumped up and asked his master if this cute person was his girlfriend. Before he could continue, Kyoichiro slammed his head and told him to shut up with the nonsense. During their chatter, the atmosphere around the students suddenly changed. When they looked around for the cause, everyone was shocked to see the presence of their saint, Ingolf, who had come personally to watch the event. As soon as Kyoichiro saw him, he gets really furious. Ingolf took his seat among the management and judges, who thanked him for making an appearance at the event. Ingolf told them to be at ease, saying he was only there out of curiosity. He added that he was interested to see if a true golden egg was hidden among the young magicians. Kyoichiro remained locked on Ingolf with an intense stare. After a while, the event was about to begin. The students took their positions and entered the tower. Team Kyoichiro stepped inside and observed the surroundings, which resembled a maze. As soon as the event started, chaos broke out immediately with explosions and the sudden appearance of magical beasts. Kyoichiro remarked that they had mentioned releasing beasts into the tower. His disciple asked what their plan would be, but before he could finish, Kyoichiro was already in motion. With flashy moves, he began soloing the monsters and clearing their path up the staircase. Kyoichiro told his stunned teammate to get moving already. The other students were shocked at the overwhelming display of power, while his disciple was thrilled and quickly followed him. Even outside the tower, the display screens showed Kyoichiro's powerful actions. Watching this, Ingolf wondered aloud why such a remarkable Japanese magician was present here. All the spectators were surprised to see a student one-shotting a monster. Shirato, who was also observing the situation, became tense. She had an idea that Kyoichiro was extraordinary, but this was still a surprise to her. Inside the tower, Team Kyoichiro continued clearing the beasts along the way, and even Kyoichiro's new lackey was pulling his weight. Kyoichiro asked him if he was able to manage the situation, and with confidence, the boy replied that he still had plenty of energy left in the tank. Hearing this, Kyoichiro told him they needed to move faster without slowing down. The red-haired kid, who had seemed confident before, was actually at his limit but continued following Kyoichiro so he wouldn't drag him down. While climbing upward on the staircase, Kyoichiro sensed something and stopped his teammate. Suddenly, an explosion destroyed the staircase ahead of them. On the other side stood another team, responsible for destroying the staircase so Kyoichiro's group couldn't catch up. The red-haired kid shouted at them for playing dirty. The other team teased him, asking if he had said something, mocking that they couldn't hear him from so far below. After that, they ran away, taunting them to sit back and watch as they lost. The boy grew angry, then asked his master about their course of action now that the path was destroyed. Kyoichiro, without any worry, told him the answer was obvious. They just needed to fly over. Shocked and worried about what he meant by fly, the boy asked how, but before he could even finish speaking, Kyoichiro grabbed him and used wind magic to propel them upward with immense speed. At the doorway of the final chamber, the team that had destroyed the bridge had already arrived. After running ahead, they believed they had secured victory, boasting that it was easier than expected. Their pride swelled, and they remarked that they would never lose to a foreign Japanese student. However, just as they celebrated their supposed win, Kyoichiro appeared, asking if they were certain of their victory. Seeing his arrival, despite the destroyed stairs, they demanded to know how he had managed to get there so quickly. Kyoichiro told them that the obstacle they created was nothing compared to what they thought, as it had barely slowed him down. His disciple, though panting heavily, boldly declared that they would not lose to random clowns. The opposing team mocked him, saying he looked half dead already. With no other option, the rival team prepared to fight Kyoichiro's group, readying their magic attacks. But before they could even launch their spells, Kyoichiro told them they were far too slow. With that, he knocked both of them out before they could even finish conjuring their magic. They collapsed, confused about what had just struck them. The red-haired boy was left impressed by Kyoichiro's speed. With all obstacles cleared, they opened the door to the final chamber. Inside was an empty hall, with the gemstone placed on a pedestal. They looked around and quickly realized that the gemstone was their target. The red-haired boy grew excited, thinking they were about to win since they were the first to arrive. However, Kyoichiro reminded him that the challenge wasn't over yet. Suddenly, countless armored soldiers appeared in the chamber out of nowhere. Even the management watching from outside became worried, as those armored knights had not been placed there by them. At this, Ingolf smiled, wondering how the students would tackle the trial that now stood before them. The magic soldiers kept appearing all around the room. Kyoichiro looked at them and knew immediately that these were not human soldiers. He realized, after seeing the sheer number of summons, that only one person was capable of controlling this many soldiers at once. It had to be Ingolf. The judges, noticing the magic, asked Ingolf if this was his doing. He casually replied that, more or less, it was true. Ingolf added that the event would have been far too boring if it ended in such an easy way. One of the judges commented that Ingolf was being cruel, but Ingolf remarked that if the students wished to become great mages, then they should be able to deal with unfair situations as a bare minimum. He went on to say that he doubted any of the students would be able to break through this many soldiers, so he had no great expectations. Still, he was curious to see how they would attempt to claim the gemstone. With a smile, he said he was eager to see what they could do. The red-haired kid grew worried and asked Kyoichiro what they should do. Kyoichiro told him clearly that, in order to reach the gemstone, their target, they had to defeat the summoned soldiers first. Hearing this, the boy nervously pointed out that the number of enemies was massive and that they looked strong as well. Kyoichiro, with a straight face, replied that even if all the odds were against him, he had to do whatever it took to reach his goals. Inspired by those words, the boy decided to help him, even if only a little. However, the very next second, he was attacked by one of the soldiers and barely manages to dodge the strikes. At the same time, other soldiers rushed toward Kyoichiro. He instantly used body enhancement magic, blocked the attack with his fingers, and followed up with a charged strike from his bare hands, taking the soldier down with a single strike. The spectators were amazed at the destruction of such a powerful creature with a single punch. Kyoichiro continued to slam down knight after knight across the room, clearing the area. His student watched in awe, growing even more impressed by his power. Even Ingolf raised his eyebrows, admitting to himself that Kyoichiro had some impressive offensive ability, but he doubted whether he could truly take on all of the soldiers summoned there. Ingolf slammed the table, insisting that his magic wasn't that easy to overcome. As if responding to Ingolf's will, the soldiers began multiplying, raising the difficulty of the challenge even further. The boy wondered what the academy was thinking by allowing such a high-level trial for students. Even the spectators grew anxious about the extreme difficulty. Shirato, watching closely, knew it would be impossible to defeat an entire army like this, yet she still held hope that Kyoichiro might somehow break through. She fixed her gaze on him, wondering what his next move would be. The soldiers swarmed around Kyoichiro, forcing him to dodge continuously while calculating the rising number of enemies. Though the situation looked overwhelming, Kyoichiro found it trivial compared to when he had fought calamity-level monsters inside an SSS rank gate. He parried their attacks and countered with sharp precision, striking down soldier after soldier. After a while, he realized that defeating them slowly would be pointless, since they might revive or multiply endlessly. The best choice was to destroy them all at once with a large-scale spell. However, he did not have the luxury of sitting idle to construct a new mental image for a spell. Instead, he decided he would have to use one he had already seen before. It would save time and be faster. He had an idea of such a spell, but he hated the person it belonged to. Given the situation, however, he resolved to bear with it. Activating void magic, Kyoichiro began forming a large-scale spell, starting with earth magic. Ingolf immediately recognized the spell in question, stood up from his seat, and knew what he was about to witness. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro combined the elements, fusing earth and wind magic, and unleashed a devastating attack. The entire chamber exploded with such force that the impact was felt even outside the tower. The spell Kyoichiro used was one that had taken Iwako 2 decades of hard work to create. Yet, Kyoichiro executed it flawlessly. With all the obstacles obliterated, He stepped forward and claimed the gemstone, declaring the game over. Seeing that he had actually done it, his disciple jumped with joy, celebrating alongside the spectators, who were all thrilled after witnessing such an incredible battle. Shirato, who had been watching intently, was stunned to see him use fusion magic. She wondered just how deep his power truly went. Ingolf, meanwhile, laughed and smiled, amazed that Kyoichiro had just cast a spell that had taken a saint 20 years to develop, and yet he used it as a mere student. Ingolf noted down the name Ase Kayasuk on his personal list, finding him utterly fascinating. As he left, Ingolf remarked that if Kyoichiro entered the special class, he would personally make sure he received training worthy of his caliber. After all the preparations and follow-up work from the events, the Academy held a ceremony to announce student promotions, including the one who would be advancing to the special class. When the announcement of Ase Kayasuk's success was made after he had earned enough points, they welcomed him and invited him onto the stage. Everyone whispered among themselves, astonished that he had only been at the Academy for a month and was already receiving such a major promotion. They even recalled the incredible battle he fought during the festival. Some commented that he seemed almost inhuman. Hearing all of this, his disciple grew smug with pride over his master's feats. After the announcements and the introduction of all the major students on stage, the Academy proceeded with the armband ceremony, for which they had invited a special guest. Kyoichiro, hearing this, wondered if the guest was who he thought it might be. The speaker then welcomed their guest, none other than the saint of the country, Ingolf. The speaker handed the stage over to him. Looking at Ingolf, Kyoichiro thought to himself, questioning whether he was really there just for the ceremony or if he had an ulterior motive. Ingolf gave a tribute to the students, then turned directly toward Kyoichiro. He told him that he had provided quite the entertainment at the festival. Ingolf then presented him with his prize, and as he passed by, he leaned in and quietly whispered for Kyoichiro to come to his estate that night. A few people noticed Ingolf speaking to Ase and wondered what he had said to him. Kyoichiro, meanwhile, pondered the true intention behind Ingolf's words. After the ceremony concluded, that same night Kyoichiro went to Ingolf's estate to discover what he wanted. He was received by a butler who told him they had been expecting him. On the way to meet Ingolf, Kyoichiro racked his brain about what Ingolf could be up to and why he had called him there. He wondered if his true identity had already been exposed. If that were the case, he regretted not having more time to prepare. He thought that if his luck had run out, then he had no choice but to face it. As he entered the room, he braced himself for the worst, preparing in case the situation escalated into a fight sooner than he had planned. Inside the room was a table with food already served, and Ingolf was seated, eating his meal. He welcomed Kyoichiro, inviting him to sit, and saying he would like to talk after sharing a meal. Kyoichiro sat down and joined him, still wondering which of the two possibilities this meeting would lead to. After the meal ended, Ingolf began the conversation by congratulating him once again on his victory at the festival and the feats he had demonstrated there, saying he found them truly impressive. Ingolf added that the battle at the top floor of the tower had particularly caught his eye. Then, slowly changing his tone, Ingolf said he had one thing he was curious about. He asked Kyoichiro directly what exactly he was hiding. The abrupt question caught Kyoichiro off guard, leaving him confused, as he couldn't immediately tell what Ingolf was referring to. He had many things hidden, his power, or the possibility that he was Misato Kyoichiro in a new body. Thinking carefully, he deduced that Ingolf had no knowledge of his true identity, because if he did, he would have been far more direct with his questioning. Since that wasn't the case, Ingolf must have been aiming at something else. Seeing Kyoichiro remain silent, Ingolf continued, pointing out that the magic Kyoichiro had used at the top of the tower was one created by Iwako after 2 decades of dedication. This made him question how Kyoichiro could possibly use such a spell. Kyoichiro relaxed on hearing this, which made him sure that Ingolf was interested only in his power. He told him that Iwako had given him special treatment back in Japan. This made sense to Ingolf. If Kyoichiro had received such training, then it followed that he could have learned that magic along the way. Kyoichiro added that Iwako was simply a good teacher and that he owed him everything. Ingolf smiled over his coffee, saying it sounded like something Iwako would do, and he appreciated how much Kyoichiro had mastered his skill. He then warned him not to misuse that power, telling him that if he did, he might end up like Misato Kyoichiro, the man who had almost torn the world apart. Kyoichiro fell silent at that. Ingolf moved to the window and said Kyoichiro must have heard about the SSS-ranked dungeon breach that had gone wild 2 decades ago. He accused the man of having drowned in his own power while cooking up a twisted plan. Ingolf claimed that Kyoichiro had intended to unleash the monsters from the gate to wipe out even his own allies. Those words angered Kyoichiro. Ingolf added that Kyoichiro had wanted to be the last man standing and had begun that plan that day, but they had been lucky and stopped him before he could. Hearing the accusation infuriated Kyoichiro. He resented being cast as the villain and knew he could not let it pass so easily. Ingolf said he was telling Kyoichiro this because he did not want him to be swallowed by his power as well. Kyoichiro replied that it was all right. The power he sought was necessary to fight evil, and he would do whatever it took to become stronger than anyone else. Ingolf studied him, pleased by the flame in his eyes, and smiled. He told Kyoichiro that, like at the festival, he was an interesting person. For that spirit, he wanted to reward him. He leaned closer as Kyoichiro asked what the reward was. Ingolf told him that in the next training cycle he would step in as Kyoichiro's trainer and sparring partner. If Kyoichiro wanted it, of course. Kyoichiro agreed and said he would be glad to accept. After all of it, he left the estate thinking that what Ingolf had bestowed on him was the best reward he could ask for. He continued thinking that he would crush Ingolf with everything at his disposal and finally settle the grudge he had harbored for more than 2 decades. The scene shifts to the academy on Special Class Periodic Training Day, where 2 students walk toward their classroom discussing the excitement for today's session. They mention that this particular class is special because the academy's top students have the rare opportunity to train directly under Ingolf, one of the most renowned fighters in the world. One of the students admits feeling a little jealous, wishing he could participate as well. As they chat, one of them glances to the side and suddenly freezes. Sitting alone nearby is Ase Kyoichiro, his expression filled with intense frustration and barely controlled anger. Realizing the atmosphere is dangerous, both students quickly rush away, not wanting to get caught in whatever emotions Kyoichiro is wrestling with. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro himself sits in silence, thinking that today he will finally be able to settle the score with Ingolf. Kyoichiro recalls that Ingolf promised to have a mock battle with him during this training session. For Ingolf, it is probably nothing more than entertaining a curious student with a simple lesson. But for Kyoichiro, it is far more personal. He intends to confront Ingolf and make him regret the betrayal that occurred 20 years ago. The scene transitions to the vast training hall where the instructor announces that the periodic training session will now begin. A moment later, Ingolf steps forward. As soon as Kyoichiro spots him, he thinks to himself that the moment he has been waiting for has finally arrived. Ingolf addresses the class, explaining that he trusts his students, the finest the academy has to offer, and acknowledges how hard they have all been training each day. He adds that observation is also a valuable form of training. For that reason, he has decided to change the format for today and hold a sparring match. The gathered students gasp and begin whispering among themselves, surprised and excited at this unexpected announcement. Ingolf calms them, saying there is no need to get restless, because he has already chosen his opponent. He calls out clearly, "Ase Kyoichiro, step forward." In the audience, a red-haired student spots Kyoichiro and becomes ecstatic, realizing that Kyoichiro will be facing Ingolf directly. He mutters that skipping his other class was absolutely worth it to witness this match. As he looks around, he notices Sayuki sitting quietly nearby and recognizes her from the Sublime Heaven Festival. Sayuki studies Kyoichiro intently, thinking to herself that he is about to challenge a pentagram saint, one celebrated throughout the world as a hero. She wonders how far Kyoichiro plans to push himself against such an overwhelming opponent. Ingolf looks at Kyoichiro and asks calmly if they should begin. Kyoichiro reminds himself that Ingolf is one of the strongest fighters among the Pentagram Saints and operates on an entirely different level from Iwako or Lei. Even so, Kyoichiro resolves that the one who will fall today will be Ingolf. Ingolf announces that he will make the first move. His aura flares as he launches a powerful strike toward Kyoichiro. The students gasp in shock at the sheer force behind the attack. Even Sayuki finds the situation troubling, noting that the shockwave from Ingolf's punch alone tears through the air. Yet, to her surprise, Kyoichiro withstands the blow. Kyoichiro wonders if Ingolf is using body enhancement magic and decides to counter with earth magic. When Ingolf's strike collides with him, Kyoichiro manages to block it using reinforced stone. Ingolf appears slightly impressed that Kyoichiro was able to stop such a heavy blow. Smiling, Kyoichiro asks if Ingolf used body enhancement magic, since the strike felt incredibly heavy. Internally, he acknowledges that he barely managed to stop it, and the power behind the attack was incredible. Ingolf smiles back and corrects him. He wasn't using body enhancement magic yet. Kyoichiro is shocked. Then Ingolf gathers an even stronger aura and states that this is what it looks like when he activates body enhancement magic. He unleashes a devastating strike at Kyoichiro. Kyoichiro is stunned by the sheer difference in power. As he attempts to block, Ingolf continues attacking with rapid, heavy strikes, leaving him no choice but to move swiftly and dodge. In the audience, the red-haired student is horrified that his master, Kyoichiro, is being pushed back so hard. He wonders what kind of technique Ingolf is using. Ingolf notices Kyoichiro's evasive movement and remarks that Kyoichiro escaped using wind magic, showing strong survival instincts. But the battle is far from over. Ingolf delivers another crushing blow, and Kyoichiro narrowly avoids it. Realizing the impact would be catastrophic, he knows he can no longer afford to hold back. Ingolf notices Kyoichiro suddenly stop moving and realizes that Kyoichiro is preparing to counterattack. Sayuki immediately recognizes the stance. It's the same technique Kyoichiro used during the festival. Kyoichiro activates fusion magic and releases a powerful green aura that surges toward Ingolf. As the blast strikes, a massive explosion fills the arena. When the dust settles, Ingolf stands unharmed, having blocked the attack with a single punch. Kyoichiro realizes Ingolf used a shockwave technique that dulled the impact. At this moment, he understands that Ingolf has become even stronger over the past 20 years. Ingolf smiles, acknowledging the intensity of the battle, and admits that he should not have been holding back either. Golden aura erupts around him, flooding the arena with overwhelming energy. Stunned and confused, Kyoichiro wonders what kind of magic Ingolf is using now. With complete confidence, surrounded by radiant golden light, Ingolf looks at Kyoichiro and says with a calm but powerful voice, "Now then, let's keep this fight going." Seeing the spell before him, Kyoichiro immediately realizes that it is a technique even he does not recognize, meaning Ingolf must have discovered or developed it sometime within the last 20 years. Although this surprises him, Kyoichiro states that it is perfectly fine by him, and he decides to evaluate Ingolf's progress by testing the spell's true worth. He begins by unleashing his void magic, followed by a powerful strike using earth magic. Ingolf pauses for a moment, wondering what Kyoichiro intends to accomplish with this approach. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro thinks to himself that this particular strike covers such a wide area that there should be no way to dodge it. However, Ingolf manages to avoid the attack by leaping high into the air. Kyoichiro knows that once Ingolf loses his stance mid-air, it will create the perfect opening for Kyoichiro to strike with a fused spell. Preparing himself, he gathers both earth and wind magic, merging them together into a fusion technique and launching it directly toward Ingolf while he is still airborne. Seeing this, the red-haired student remarks with excitement that Master Kyoichiro is finally using his fusion magic. Sayuki looks surprised as well, quickly realizing that Ingolf is losing balance in the air, making it an ideal opportunity for Kyoichiro to land a decisive blow. Just when everyone thinks the attack will strike Ingolf head-on, Ingolf suddenly smiles. His aura intensifies dramatically, catching Kyoichiro completely off guard. To everyone's shock, Ingolf takes the fusion spell head-on and blocks it with nothing but his hand. The force of the magic disperses, completely nullified. Kyoichiro is stunned to see Ingolf effortlessly break through his fusion spell, and Sayuki also struggles to accept that someone could neutralize a technique of that level so casually. Back in the arena, Ingolf calmly tells Kyoichiro that the strike was excellent, but it is simply not strong enough to break through Ingolf's mana armor. His right arm is now enveloped in a glowing golden aura. Kyoichiro, surprised at first, realizes that this golden haze functions as a powerful armor. The fact that Ingolf can shrug off fusion magic without suffering a scratch reveals an overwhelming level of durability. Stepping forward, Ingolf explains that his armor does more than just protect him. This mana armor transforms his entire body into a weapon, combining offense and defense seamlessly. That, he claims, is the true essence of his technique. Ingolf then charges toward Kyoichiro at full speed, covering his entire body with mana armor. As Ingolf's strike lands, Kyoichiro barely manages to dodge, yet Ingolf's attack still smashes into the ground, completely breaking the terrain. The red-haired student is stunned at the sheer power behind Ingolf's strike. Kyoichiro finds himself being pushed back repeatedly. Once the dust settles, he realizes that Ingolf is far stronger than he was 2 decades ago, and that this mana armor is one of the biggest reasons behind that enormous growth. Kyoichiro thinks to himself that he does have a countermeasure, but the spell is incomplete, and he is unsure whether he can even pull it off successfully. Ingolf asks if Kyoichiro is not going to strike back, and when he receives no immediate response, he decides that he will end the duel himself. Feeling the pressure, Kyoichiro becomes frustrated, knowing he has no choice but to attempt the new spell. Kyoichiro begins gathering blue mana into his hand. Seeing this, Ingolf wonders if Kyoichiro is trying to forge something, but he still believes there is nothing that can stop him. However, as he prepares to advance, Ingolf suddenly senses an ominous aura surrounding him. Alarmed, he rushes forward to strike. Kyoichiro, unable to complete the spell in time, cannot block the attack and is pushed back again. He thinks to himself that, as expected, he has still not mastered this new technique. Yet he also knows that if things continue like this, he will inevitably lose. Before Kyoichiro can attempt anything else, Ingolf lowers his stance and states that this is enough. Kyoichiro is caught off guard. Ingolf calmly explains that they have accomplished more than enough for a sparring match and suggests that they end the session here. Although Kyoichiro feels frustrated, the training officially concludes. As Ingolf dismisses the class and prepares to leave, several students praise him for the incredible demonstration. They found the match inspiring and were impressed that Kyoichiro held his ground, even though Ingolf had the advantage throughout the entire fight. The students excitedly discuss how remarkable the pentagram saint truly is. The red-haired student approaches Kyoichiro and tells him he fought well, adding that when it comes to someone like Ingolf, nobody can blame Kyoichiro for struggling. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro reflects silently, acknowledging that he underestimated Ingolf. In his current state, he cannot defeat him. Kyoichiro understands he must push his void magic even further and continue to grow stronger. Sayuki watches all of this and thinks to herself that no one else seems to understand the potential that Ase Kyoichiro is truly hiding. Then the scene shifts back to Ingolf, who wonders about the ominous aura he sensed earlier. It was unlike anything he had experienced before. Even so, Ingolf smiles, stating that it has been ages since he has had such an exhilarating clash, and he knows one thing for certain. Kyoichiro is not the kind of man who would allow his journey to end here. Later that night, the scene shifts to Ingolf, who is sitting quietly in his room. He reflects to himself that it has been a very long time since he experienced a battle that genuinely excited him. Yet that man, Ase Kyoichiro, truly surprised him. Ingolf never expected Kyoichiro to possess such refined strength, and in one particular moment during the sparring match, he even felt something he had not felt in years, a flicker of fear. As he sits there, Ingolf realizes he has only experienced that feeling once before. The scene transitions into a memory from years ago, when Kyoichiro was still Ingolf's master. In that memory, Kyoichiro calmly tells him that it looks like the victory belongs to him. Ingolf, still catching his breath, asks what kind of attack Kyoichiro used just now. He cannot believe that his master had been hiding a spell of that level all along. Kyoichiro responds by saying that Ingolf almost managed to defeat him, and besides, a teacher must always keep at least one hidden ace up his sleeve until the very end. Hearing this, Ingolf smiles warmly, thinking that his master never changes. Kyoichiro always rises above expectations, and that is exactly what made him not just a mentor, but also Ingolf's greatest rival. Feeling energized, Ingolf stands up and asks Kyoichiro for another sparring match. Returning to the present, Ingolf thinks that the memory feels nostalgic, yet he knows that a past tainted by darkness cannot simply turn pure again. Even so, he misses having someone who could stand beside him as an equal. He misses the feeling of facing a true rival the way he once faced his master. For years he longed for such a challenge, until Ase Kyoichiro appeared. Now, Ingolf finds himself genuinely excited to see how far Kyoichiro can go and what heights he will eventually reach. The scene shifts to a vast forest where Kyoichiro stands alone, reflecting that this place remains unchanged even after 20 years. He realizes he may be able to use the forest's hidden features to his advantage. Right now, he cannot match Ingolf's current level, and he knows he must retrain himself from the ground up. Fortunately, the dungeon located within this forest is the perfect place for such intensive training. As Kyoichiro enters it, he immediately notices that the dungeon possesses a powerful gravity field, far stronger than the surface outside. He mutters that no wonder Ingolf's punches carried such weight. If Kyoichiro took one of those full force, he would be finished. His first step, therefore, must be to strengthen his physical body. Once he can confront Ingolf head-on, the new spell he has been developing will become the key to victory. Standing confidently, he whispers, "Just wait for me, Ingolf." 3 days later, we shift back to the academy, where all the students have finished their classes for the day. Among them is Sayuki, who feels uneasy because Kyoichiro has not returned to the dormitory since the sparring match. She wonders where he could have gone. At that moment, she encounters Kyoichiro's disciple, the red-haired student. He looks down and admits that everything feels boring without Kyoichiro around. Noticing Sayuki's concern, she asks if he knows anything about where Kyoichiro might be. The boy replies that he is not completely sure, but he heard something about Kyoichiro heading toward the eastern forest to train. Hearing this, Sayuki immediately understands where Kyoichiro is likely training. She thanks the red-haired student and quickly leaves for the forest. When she arrives, she recalls that there is a hidden dungeon deep within this area, an ideal place for someone seeking to grow stronger. But then she pauses, questioning how Kyoichiro would even know about the dungeon. He should have no knowledge of this region at all, unless it is truly possible that Ase Kyoichiro is actually Misato Kyoichiro in disguise. The thought makes her tense. The scene shifts to a month earlier, when Lady Claudia secretly ordered Sayuki to investigate anyone who might be Misato Kyoichiro hiding under a different identity. Ase Kyoichiro's name was on that list. Returning to the present, Sayuki thinks that if Kyoichiro truly is Misato, then the situation is far more serious than expected. She enters the dungeon and recalls that she had visited this place once before for a mission. It is just as overwhelming and intense as she remembered. Seeing the destruction around her, she realizes Kyoichiro must have been training here relentlessly. Soon she spots Kyoichiro standing among a number of defeated monsters. Her eyes widen, and she quickly hides herself. His aura is completely different, far stronger, more polished, and impossibly intense. She cannot believe that he defeated all of those creatures alone. It surpasses anything she ever imagined. After exiting the dungeon, Sayuki immediately calls Lady Claudia and reports everything she saw. She explains that with Kyoichiro's current training pace, he might actually reach Ingolf's level. Hearing this, Claudia asks about the possibility of Kyoichiro truly being Misato. Sayuki answers that the probability is very high. Lady Claudia smiles, ending the call with clear satisfaction. She remarks that everything is unfolding exactly as she expected. Things are about to become very interesting, she says, and adds that all events are moving in perfect alignment with the Lord's prediction. The scene returns to the dungeon, where Kyoichiro stands confidently. After weeks of intense training, he finally declares that his technique is complete. With renewed determination, he tells himself that this time, without question, he will manage to land a decisive blow on Ingolf. The story then shifts to Iwako's office. Iwako is buried in paperwork when his phone suddenly rings. He picks it up, and to his surprise, the caller is Ingolf himself. Startled, Iwako immediately asks if something is wrong. Ingolf calmly replies that there is something he wants to confirm, a question regarding a particular student named Ase Kyoichiro. Hearing this, Iwako freezes in shock. The very last thing he expected was for Ingolf to bring up Kyoichiro. After a short conversation, Ingolf ends the call, saying that he simply wanted that information. Left alone, Iwako leans back in his chair, rattled. He mutters to himself in disbelief, wondering why Ingolf suddenly became curious about Ase Kyoichiro's past. But he cannot tell Ingolf the truth, that Kyoichiro is actually Misato. If Iwako ever revealed that secret, he is certain the consequences would be fatal for him. The scene transitions to Ingolf, who has also been thinking deeply. He realizes that Iwako is hiding something significant, yet he cannot find any solid evidence to confirm his suspicions. As he gets ready to leave his room, he suddenly notices a letter lying on the floor, as if someone quietly slipped it under the door. Confused, he picks it up, wondering who could have delivered it so mysteriously. When he opens the letter and reads its contents, a surge of anger rises within him. His expression hardens as he mutters that this must be the confirmation he needed all along. The story then shifts into a memory from the past. Ingolf apologizes to Misato for what happened earlier that day. Misato simply replies that it is fine. Since Ingolf's home was being threatened, of course Misato would lend his support. Yet Ingolf asks if Misato is truly certain about his decision. Conquering the dungeon requested by the nation would have brought far more prestige and reward. Misato dismisses the thought, saying that the influential leaders merely want to flaunt their power, and he would rather assist the people who genuinely need help. Hearing this, Ingolf smiles, thinking that Misato is truly kind-hearted. The two gaze out at the peaceful village below. Misato comments on how pleasant the place is, and Ingolf explains that this area is called Keld's Hill, the best spot around to watch the sunset. Misato nods, saying he can tell how much Ingolf cherishes it. Inspired, Ingolf admits that he wants to become stronger, not only for his village, but because there are many other places suffering from dungeon outbreaks. Misato responds with enthusiasm, saying that he will team up with Ingolf. Standing up, Misato adds that he has decided to train Ingolf here during his stay in the country. Overjoyed, Ingolf readily agrees. Returning to the present, Ingolf stands alone near a window, remembering those days when he and Misato would meet at the hill, pushing each other to new limits whenever they found time. But those memories are tainted, because Misato was the one who later devastated Ingolf's hometown. With a conflicted expression, Ingolf decides that he will not involve Nathaniel, Claudia, or the other pentagram saints. This is a burden he must shoulder alone. He will be the one to confront Kyoichiro. Back at the academy, Kyoichiro walks down a quiet corridor. He thinks to himself that the next periodic training session is only a week away, and he intends to challenge Ingolf again then. This time, he vows, the outcome will be different. Suddenly, the red-haired student rushes over, excited to see Kyoichiro return. Kyoichiro asks what the hurry is, and the student explains that the headmaster instructed him to deliver a letter. Kyoichiro opens the letter and instantly stops in his tracks. Shock hits him so hard that he cannot hide it. The red-haired boy asks what is written inside, but Kyoichiro simply says it is nothing and walks away quickly, frustration clear on his face. The boy is left confused, unable to understand what just happened. Meanwhile, Sayuki quietly observes from a distance, having seen everything. The scene shifts to a serene forest, where Ingolf stands waiting. He looks toward the hill and remarks that Kyoichiro really did come. On Keld's Hill, Kyoichiro arrives as well and immediately asks if this location is tied to the reason Ingolf summoned him. Ingolf confirms it and states plainly that he knows Kyoichiro's true identity, Misato Kyoichiro. Kyoichiro narrows his eyes and asks why Ingolf called him here. Taking a step forward, Ingolf says the reason should be obvious. His aura begins to rise and swirl around him as he declares that he intends to settle everything and bring Kyoichiro down once and for all. Kyoichiro stands firm. He replies that if that is how Ingolf feels, then the sentiment is mutual. Kyoichiro begins gathering his aura as well. As they stand facing each other, Kyoichiro calmly states that he has something he wishes to ask. Earlier, Ingolf confidently declared that he was certain Ase Kyoichiro and Misato Kyoichiro were the same person, so Kyoichiro wants to know how Ingolf managed to figure that out. Ingolf replies that this is not information Kyoichiro needs to know, but he will at least reveal one thing. This entire confrontation has nothing to do with the Pentagram Saints, as Ingolf's motives are entirely personal. Hearing this, Kyoichiro asks if that is the reason Ingolf specifically chose this remote place for their battle. Ingolf responds with a firm, exactly, and with rising anger, warns Kyoichiro not to misunderstand. Ingolf will never forgive him. Unfazed smile, Kyoichiro remarks that what an interesting coincidence, because it seems they are on the same page. As both fighters begin gathering their aura, Ingolf tells him that as Kyoichiro already witnessed in their previous mock battle, Ingolf's mana armor can block every type of attack, whether physical or magical, it makes no difference. According to Ingolf, this means Kyoichiro has absolutely no chance of winning. Ingolf then launches a powerful strike directly at Kyoichiro, but Kyoichiro remains completely calm. Ingolf wonders what Kyoichiro plans to do, remembering that in the mock battle the only thing Kyoichiro could do was dodge. If that is still the case, Ingolf intends to overwhelm him with another shockwave. Yet to Ingolf's surprise, Kyoichiro suddenly charges forward head-on instead of evading. In that moment, Kyoichiro activates his own mana armor and breaks straight through Ingolf's incoming strike. Within an instant, Kyoichiro appears right in front of him, and both of them land a direct hit using their mana armor-enhanced attacks. The collision causes a powerful explosion, sending them both sliding backward. As they gather themselves, Kyoichiro thinks that Ingolf's mana armor is as hard as solid rock. Meanwhile, Ingolf is stunned. He never imagined Kyoichiro would break through that shockwave, and even more shocking, Kyoichiro's attacks hit harder than before. Noticing Kyoichiro's physique, Ingolf realizes that Kyoichiro must have been training intensely. But that is not all. Ingolf is furious to discover that Kyoichiro has also copied his mana armor technique. Frustrated, Ingolf declares that he has finally figured out the secret behind Kyoichiro's magic. According to him, Kyoichiro's so-called void magic is nothing more than the ability to copy other people's skills, but an imitation is still just an imitation, and against someone like Ingolf, such a trick will never work. Ingolf adds that Kyoichiro's time magic from the past was something he once admired, even looked up to, but Kyoichiro is no longer the person he once was. As Ingolf intensifies the pressure of his mana armor, he shouts that Kyoichiro will never be able to break through it. Hearing this, Kyoichiro calmly responds that copying skills is close to the truth, but not quite right. Void magic goes far deeper than that. With a confident smile, he states that it took him a while to fully picture it, but now he believes he can finally show Ingolf its true form. As Kyoichiro's blue aura begins surrounding him, Ingolf realizes that this must be the technique Kyoichiro attempted at the end of their mock battle, Kyoichiro's ultimate move. Even so, Ingolf believes it will not matter. Without hesitation, Ingolf charges forward with his full strength, convinced that no known spell can break through his mana armor. As he comes right in front of Kyoichiro and prepares to strike, Kyoichiro activates his void magic at the exact moment Ingolf raises his arm. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Kyoichiro's strike lands cleanly on Ingolf, shattering his mana armor and injuring his right arm. Ingolf is completely shocked. He cannot believe Kyoichiro managed to damage him, let alone break through mana armor that no one has ever been able to destroy. Stunned, he struggles to accept what just happened. Kyoichiro calmly tells him that he already explained. Void magic is not simply about copying. Then Ingolf sees that Kyoichiro is holding a massive flame sword. Furious and confused, he demands to know what that weapon is. Kyoichiro answers clearly. Creation through imagination. That is the true essence of void magic. And now, Ingolf will witness the real power of void magic for himself.